Hey everyone, tonight we'll delve into the epic battle that ended the Aztec gods, a cataclysmic clash woven into the fabric of ancient Mesoamerican lore. Imagine the thunderous rumble of volcanoes awakening beneath the Valley of Mexico, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of copal incense, and the distant cries of jaguars echo through mist-shrouded temples. Feel the ground tremble as if the earth itself is gasping, drawing breath for a storm that will reshape the heavens. But you probably want to believe what you are about to hear, that the deities who once commanded the sun, rain, and stars turned their immortal fury upon one another, unraveling their own divine tapestry in a war that silenced the gods forever. So, before the tension gets too high, take a moment to like the episode and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and the local time. It's fascinating to see where this tale reaches under different skies. Now close your eyes, imagine the ancient mountains, and let's unravel this epic tale together. You stand atop the jagged peak of a sacred volcano in the heart of Mesoamerica. The year lost to the mists of time, perhaps around the 14th century, when the Aztec Empire was rising like a serpent from the waters of Lake Texcoco. The wind whips around you, carrying whispers from the primordial depths, and you sense it, the ancient awakening. It's as if the very stones beneath your feet are stirring, humming with a low, resonant vibration that travels up your spine like a forgotten memory resurfacing. In Aztec mythology, the world itself is a living entity, born from the bones of previous creations. And here in this moment, those bones creak and shift. You hear the faint crackle of lightning in the distance, not from a storm, but from the friction of divine essences, brushing against one another after eons of uneasy slumber. The air tastes of sulfur and salt mingling with the earthy aroma of maize fields far below, where mortal farmers till the chinampas, oblivious to the cosmic unrest brewing above. As you peer into the valley, the landscape unfolds like a codex painting come to life. Towering pyramids pierce the twilight sky, their steps stained with the offerings of jade and feathers. But deeper, beyond the veil of human sight, you perceive the stirring of primordial forces. These are the ancient energies that predated even the gods themselves, the raw chaos of creation, the Huitzilopochtli, the dual essence of being and non-being that birthed the Aztec pantheon. Historically, the Aztecs believed their world was the fifth sun, a fragile epoch destined to end in earthquakes and local legends from Tenochtitlan. Speak of how the city's founding was marked by an eagle devouring a serpent on a cataclysmic sign from Huitzilopochtli himself. Yet, in this awakening, that sign feels inverted, as if the serpent is now uncoiling to consume the eagle. You feel a psychological pull, that eerie sense of déjà vu mortals experience when glimpsing the infinite. Much like the awe and dread described in ancient Nahuatl texts, where seers would fall into trances, their minds bridging the gap between the earthly and the divine. Imagine you are one such seer, your heart pounding as the first tendrils of unrest manifest. A low rumble builds, not thunder, but the groan of the underworld stirring. Shababa's gates creaking open just a fraction. The gods, those towering figures of feathered headdresses and obsidian blades, begin to sense it too. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, coils in his celestial lair, his scales shimmering with iridescent green and blue, while Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, polishes his obsidian surface, reflecting not just the stars, but the fractures in the divine order. Here's a quirky detail that lingers in the annals of Aztec lore. Quetzalcoatl's tail feathers, said to be plucked from the Quetzal bird, weren't mere adornments. They were enchanted to whisper secrets of the cosmos when rustled by the wind, a bizarre artifact that could drive mortals mad with visions if overheard. You strain your ears now, and there it is, a soft hiss, like silk on stone, carrying fragments of prophecies long buried. The psychological intrigue deepens. Gods, for all their power, are not immune to doubt. They ponder their own mortality much as humans do in moments of crisis, questioning if their immortal games have tipped into something irreversible. You wouldn't believe what happens next. As the air thickens with the scent of blooming nightshade, a plant revered in Aztec rituals for inducing prophetic dreams, but the question that remains is, what ancient grudge could awaken such forces, pulling the deities from their thrones into the abyss of conflict? As the volcano's breath quickens, you descend the slope, your footsteps echoing in the gathering dusk. The path leads to a hidden cenote, its waters black as jaguar fur. where reflections dance unnaturally, showing glimpses of feathered warriors assembling in the shadows. Heroes of old, like those in the tales of the Florentine Codex, once communed here with spirits, but now the waters ripple with urgency. You kneel at the edge, and a chill seeps into your bones. The water's surface blooming, with ethereal lights blue and gold, like the eyes of distant deities awakening. The unrest spreads, a subtle tremor that mortals attribute to earth spirits, but you know better. In the villages below, priests clad in jaguar pelts chant to Tlaloc, the rain god begging for fertility, unaware that his storms are omens of something far grander. Ancient mysteries unfold as you witness the first signs. A flock of macaws shrieks overhead, their cries forming words in Nahuatl. The fifth sun cracks. It's a local legend from the Mixtec codices, where birds served as messengers between realms, their feathers carrying the weight of fate. The psychological tension builds. You feel the weight of inevitability, that human compulsion to ignore warnings until they crash upon us, mirrored in the god's own hubris. Deeper into the night, the awakening intensifies. Hear the distant toll of a stone drum, its rhythm syncing with your heartbeat, drawing you toward the great temple of the moon. There, under the watchful gaze of Quetzalcoatl's dismembered form, a bizarre artifact from myth. Her jade skirt said to grant visions of lunar eclipses that foretold betrayals. The air shimmers. Deities stir in their astral forms, their presences like shadows lengthening at dusk. Tezcatlipoca's mirror catches your eye, reflecting not your face, but a fractured pantheon. Each god etched with lines of unspoken rivalry. As the primordial forces coalesce, you sense the divine unrest taking shape, a web of tensions long suppressed, now bubbling like magma. The stars above wheel unnaturally, forming patterns that whisper of battles to come, evoking the Norse legends of Ragnarok where gods met their end. But here in Aztec mythology, it's a more intimate unraveling. What would you do if you stood at this precipice, hearing the earth's secrets? The wind carries a final, haunting note, a flute's melancholic wail from some hidden ceremony, leaving you poised on the edge of revelation. Yet as the night deepens, a subtle shift occurs, the first fracture in the celestial harmony, a star winking out as if extinguished by an unseen hand.
I'll remember that whisper from the feathers.
It grows louder, hinting at councils yet to convene where gods will clash over fates unwritten. That whisper from Quetzalcoatl's feathers lingers in the air, like a half-forgotten dream, guiding your steps downward from the moon temple's shadowed flanks toward the heart of the divine realm. You descend through veils of mist that part like reluctant curtains, revealing a vast amphitheater carved from obsidian and jade, where the gods' fractured council assembles under a canopy of swirling nebulae. The ground beneath you pulses with warmth, as if the earth's core beats in rhythm with the gathering storm, and you feel the pull of ancient mysteries drawing you closer to the circle of immortals. The air hums with tension, thick and electric, carrying the faint tang of burning turquoise, an offering that mortals once scattered on sacred altars to summon the deity's attention. You stand at the periphery of this ethereal gathering, invisible yet acutely aware, as the major deities materialize one by one, their forms coalescing from starlight and smoke. Quetzalcoatl arrives first, his serpentine body undulating gracefully, feathers rustling with that no ominous whisper, his eyes gleaming like emeralds in the dim glow. Beside him coils Tezcatlipoca, the jaguar god of the night sky, his obsidian mirror slung across his chest, reflecting distorted images of those present warped faces that hint at the hidden rivalries festering within the Aztec pantheon. Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird warrior, strides in with the sun's fire trailing his footsteps, his shield emblazoned with the image of a serpent's heart, a symbol of his unyielding vigilance. Tlaloc, the rainbringer, emerges from a sudden downpour that soaks only his colossal form, water dripping from his goggle-eyed mask like tears of foreboding. And Zyptotec, the flayed one, shimmers into view, his golden skin glistening as if freshly shed, embodying the cycle of renewal that now feels perilously fragile. The council convenes amid rising tensions, the air crackling with unspoken accusations, much like the historical gatherings described in the Aztec Codex Borgia, where priests would consult oracles in times of crisis, interpreting the flight of birds or the patterns of spilled blood to divine the god's will. Here, in the divine amphitheater, no blood is spilled yet, but the atmosphere thrums with the same urgency legends from Tenochtitlan tell of how such councils once decided the fates of empires. Balancing the delicate equilibrium between creation and destruction, you hear the low murmur of their voices, a symphony of Nahuatl tones that blend like thunder rolling over lake waters. Deep resonant bass from Tlaloc, sharp hisses from Quetzalcoatl, and the rhythmic tap of Huitzilopochtli's spear against the stone floor. As the deities settle into their thrones, carved from the bones of fallen stars, you sense the psychological intrigue unfolding, the way immortals, much like mortals in heated debates, mask their fears behind grand pronouncements. Tezcatlipoca leans forward, his mirror catching the light and casting fractured rainbows across the assembly. And he speaks first, his voice a silky growl that echoes off the obsidian walls. The primordial stirrings we felt on the volcano's peak, they are no mere tremor. They signal the unraveling of our order, brothers and sisters. Who among us has invited this chaos? His words hang heavy, probing, stirring the hidden rivalries that have simmered since the world's fifth creation. Quetzalcoatl counters with measured calm, his feathers whispering counterpoints to the accusations advocating for harmony, while Huitzilopochtli grips his weapon tighter, his eyes flashing with the sun's unbridled fury, interpreting the unrest as a challenge to his dominion over the daytime sky. A quirky detail emerges in the midst of the discourse. Tezcatlipoca's obsidian mirror isn't just a tool of divination. It's said to hold a bizarre enchantment where it captures not only sights, but echoes of unspoken thoughts, replaying them as faint mocking laughter when tensions peak. A artifact that once drove lesser spirits to madness during council spats. You hear it now, a soft chuckle rippling through the air as Tezcatlipoca's mirror gleams, amplifying the undercurrents of envy between the rain god and the warrior, or the ancient grudge between the feathered serpent and the smoken mirror. Born from their mythic contest for rulership over the previous world age, the sensory details envelop you. The scent of ozone from Talisling's lingering rain, the metallic temps of Huitzilopochtli's armor, in the subtle vibration of Zyptotec's flayed skin rustling like dry leaves in a breeze, each element building an epic cadence to the unfolding drama. Imagine you are seated among them, your mortal heart racing as the debate intensifies. The gods' voices rising like waves crashing against the shore of Lake Texcoco. Tlaloc thunders about omens in the clouds, shapes of serpents devouring suns, drawing from local legends where his tears flooded valleys to punish human neglect. Zyptotec, ever the renewer, proposes rituals to mend the fractures, his voice soothing yet edged with desperation. Observing how even deities grapple with the nature of change, much like humans facing inevitable loss, clinging to traditions that no longer serve. But the rivalries reveal themselves in subtle barbs. Tezcatlipoca accuses Quetzalcoatl of softness, his mirror flashing images of past indulgences, while Huitzilopochtli boasts of his solar conquests, dismissing the others as shadows in his light. The psychological tension mounts a web of intrigue, where each god's words mask deeper ambitions, evoking the ancient mysteries of Aztec mythology, where deities were as flawed as their worshippers, prone to jealousy and power plays that mirrored the courts of emperors in Tenochtitlan. You feel the air grow heavier, charged with the potential for schism, as if the very fabric of the cosmos strains under the weight of their egos. What would you say if you could interject? Standing in this circle of legends, urging unity before the fractures widen. The council drags on, voices overlapping in a cacophony that drowns out the distant calls of night birds. But beneath it all, alliances begin to form in whispers, fragile as spider silk. Yet, as accusations fly and mirrors reflect half-truths, sudden hush falls when Quetzalcoatl unfurls a vision from his feathers, a glimpse of battles yet to come, stars falling like rain. The deities exchange glances, the rising tensions now a palpable force, hinting at the visions that will soon compel one among them to dream of doom. But the question that remains is, how deep do these hidden rivalries run, and will they forge unbreakable bonds or shatter the pantheon before the first blows fall? The amphitheater's lights dim slightly, shadows lengthening as Tezcatlipoca's laughter fades, leaving the council poised on the brink, the whisper from the feathers now joined by a chorus of uneasy breaths. The hush in the amphitheater lingers like the after-echo of a struck gong, the gods. Uneasy breaths mingling with the faint rustle of Quetzalcoatl's feathers as he rises from his throne, his serpentine form casting long shadows across the obsidian floor. You follow him instinctively, drawn by that same whisper that is threaded through the night, now swelling into a melodic hum that resonates in your chest. The council disperses in murmurs, alliances half-formed, and rivalries sharpening like obsidian edges. Quetzalcoatl withdraws to his celestial area floating pyramid suspended amid swirling clouds over the eastern horizon, where dawn's first light kisses the world awake. The air here is cooler, laced with the fresh scent of Ducus Naples. In the distant roar of waterfalls plunging into sacred cenotes, a realm where the feathered serpent contemplates the cosmos in solitude. You coil beside him as he settles into a nest of woven quetzal plumes, his massive body undulating slowly, scales glistening like emeralds under moonlight. The tensions from the council weigh on him, visible in the subtle twitch of his wings. And you sense the psychological burden. Even deities carry the doubt that creeps in after grand debates, much like mortals waking from nightmares. With hearts pounding, questioning the boundaries of their reality. In Aztec mythology, Quetzalcoatl is the architect of humanity. The morning star who descended to the underworld to retrieve bones for the fifth creation, a mainstream historical fact echoed in the codices of pre-Columbian scribes, where his benevolence contrasts the chaos of his rival Tezcatlipoca. Local legends from the Toltec ruins at Tula speak of his exile, a self-imposed journey after a moment of weakness, teaching that even creators must face their shadows. As the night deepens, Quetzalcoatl's eyes, those piercing orbs of liquid gold, begin to glaze over. His breath slowing to a rhythmic hiss that syncs with the wind sigh through the pyramid's arches. You feel the shift, the veil between waking and dreaming thinning, and suddenly, he receives the prophetic dream, a vision that envelops you both in a tapestry of swirling colors and sounds. The dream unfolds in present tense, vivid and unrelenting. You soar with him over a fractured sky, where the five suns of previous worlds blaze and collide, their fires merging into a cataclysmic blaze that foretells change for the divine realm. Thunder cracks like the snap of cosmic bones, and below, the earth heaves. Volcanoes spewing rivers of molten jade that carve new paths through the landscape, symbolizing the upheaval to come. Sensory details assault youth, the acrid bite of ash in the dream wind, the metallic tang of blood from unseen wounds in the fabric of reality. And the eerie chorus of macaws shrieking prophecies in Nahuatl, their calls twisting into warnings of gods falling like stars. Quetzalcoatl's form twists in the vision, his feathers shedding light that illuminates horrors, Tezcatlipoca's mirror shattering into 1,000 shards, each reflecting a different betrayal. Huitzilopochtli's sun dimming as shadows encroach. Tlaloc's rains turning to acid that etches away temple stones. The psychological intrigue deepens here as the dream probes the feathered serpent's mind, unearthing fears of obsolescence, that immortal dread of being unmade by one's own creations, akin to the human phenomenon of prophetic anxiety, where visions haunt the subconscious, blurring prophecy and paranoia. A quirky or bizarre detail surfaces in the dream's core: Quetzalcoatl's breath. When he exhales in slumber, forms ephemeral serpents of mist that coil around his headdress. Each one a miniature artifact whispering alternate futures, one where harmony reigns, another where the pantheon dissolves into nothingness. A peculiar trait from folklore that made seers seek his exhalations for guidance, though many lost their sanity chasing the vapor's riddles. You lean closer, inhaling the dream mist yourself, and fragments of the cataclysm flood your thoughts, realms overlapping, mortal cities crumbling under divine footsteps. In a great battle where deities wield stars as weapons, their clashes echoing like the toll of the world's largest drum. The epic cadence builds, methodical yet suspenseful, as Quetzalcoatl thrashes subtly in his nest, his tail lashing against the pyramid's edge, sending ripples through the clouds. Imagine you are entwined in this vision, your mortal essence brushing against divine insight. What would you grasp from the chaos, the hope of renewal, or the terror of endings? Ancient mysteries of Aztec lore weave through, drawing parallels to the heroes of old who communed with gods in dreams, their tales inscribed on amot bark paper, revealing how prophecies often masked warnings about hubris. The dream intensifies, showing the cataclysmic change as a necessary purge. The fifth sun cracking to birth a sixth, but at the cost of the old god's dominion. their power scattering like pollen on the wind. Quetzalcoatl's mind races, observing the nature of gods and mortals alike, both bound by cycles of creation and decay, yet resistant to the transformation that ensures survival. The vision peaks in a blaze of light, Quetzalcoatl's feathers igniting with inner fire, illuminating a final Imija-shadowed figure, Tezcatlipoca perhaps, laughing amid ruins as the celestial order fractures. You hear the dream's climax in a deafening roar, the sound of worlds colliding, fading into the soft patter of rain on feathers as Quetzalcoatl stirs. He awakens with a gasp, his eyes refocusing on the horizon where dawn threatens to break, the prophetic weight settling like a mantle. The air around the eyrie thickens with unspoken dread, the whisper from his feathers now a urgent plea, carrying echoes of the dream to the winds that will soon reach the other deities. But the question that remains is, will this vision unite the pantheon in preparation, or sow the seeds of the discord that Tezcatlipoca so eagerly awaits? As Quetzalcoatl rises, shaking off the dream's residue, his gaze turns southward, where shadows lengthen in the direction of the smoke and mirrors domain. The first tendrils of unrest, now laced with the scent of impending sorcery. Quetzalcoatl's golden eyes fix southward from his eyrie, the clouds parting just enough to reveal the encroaching twilight where shadows stretch like grasping fingers toward the obsidian heartlands. You feel the pull as well, an invisible current tugging at your essence, carrying you through the veils of mist and starlight down to the shadowed domain of Tezcatlipoca, the smoke and mirror god. The air shifts here, growing cooler and heavier, infused with the musky scent of jaguar fur and smoldering copal, as if the night itself exhales in anticipation.
The landscape below
Transforms into a labyrinth of mirrored pools and jagged black rocks, reflections twisting the world into infinite distortions, a realm where reality bends under the weight of divine malice. You arrive at the edge of his sanctum, a vast cavern mouth yawning open like the maw of a cosmic beast, its walls veined with pulsing obsidian that gleams under a false moon's glow. Tezcatlipoca lounges upon a throne of polished black stone, to form a mesmerizing blend of humanoid grace and feline menestall and lithe. With skin like smoked jade, clad in a cloak of flayed skins that whispers with every shift. His right foot, the one said to be missing from ancient battles, ends in a mere polished stump that reflects the approach of unseen visitors. A quirky detail from Aztec lore where this imperfection symbolizes his ever-watchful vigilance, allowing him to foresee threats from any angle, even as it reminds him of vulnerabilities long past. You sense the psychological intrigue immediately, the way his presence stirs unease in the soul. Much like the mortal experience of facing an interrogator whose eyes seem to peel back layers of hidden thoughts exposing insecurities one dare not name. The god's obsidian mirror hangs at his side, not yet activated but already humming with latent power, its surface rippling like liquid night. In mainstream historical accounts from the Spanish chroniclers like Bernardino de Sahagan, who documented Aztec rituals in the 16th century, Tezcatlipoca was invoked during the month of Tezcatlipoca as the embodiment of fate and sorcery, with priests adorning themselves in his image to predict the empire's fortunes through divinations. Local legends from the highlands around Teotihuacan whisper of how his worshippers would fast for days, merging with visions that shaped wars and harvests. Here, in his domain, he sows discord with enigmatic whispers that slither from his lips like smoke, challenging the balance of power that Quetzalcoatl's dream so precariously upholds. You hear the first of them now, a low, velvety murmur that curls around you. The feathered one dreams of unity, but dreams are fragile veils over truth. Why cling to a counsel that weakens us all? Sensory details envelop you as Tezcatlipoca rises. His movements fluid and predatory, the air vibrating with the subtle chime of jade beads on his anklets. The cavern's depths echo with distant drips, like tears falling into an abyss. And the scent of night-blooming cereus flowers wafts up, their petals unfurling only in darkness to release a hypnotic perfume that clouds the mind. He paces before a wall of mirrors, each one a portal to different facets of the pantheon. Quetzalcoatl, coiling in worry with Huitzilopochtli, sharpening his spear Tlaloc. Brooding in storm clouds and, with each step he exhales, whispers tailored to exploit their flaws. To the warrior god's reflection he breathes, Your sun rises alone, lie with shadows, and it will never set. To the rainbringer, your waters nourish, but mine erode. Foundations join me, or be swept away. These enigmatic words travel on invisible winds, infiltrating the divine realms, stirring doubts that fester like unseen wounds. The epic cadence builds methodically suspense, coiling tighter as Tezcatlipoca's psychological games unfold, observing how gods like mortals ensnared in court intrigues succumb to the allure of power's promise, their immortal egos mirroring the human frailty that leads to betrayal. You stand close enough to feel the chill radiating from his mirror. A bizarre artifact that not only reflects the visible, but captures echoes of the soul faint. Spectral voices replaying private fears, such as Quetzalcoatl's lingering guilt over past exiles, or Huitzilopochtli's paranoia of eternal night. Legend holds that this mirror once trapped the thoughts of a rival deity, replaying them eternally until madness set in, a detail that adds an otherworldly layer to his sorcery, making his whispers not just words but weapons forged from the psyche. Imagine you are ensnared in one of these whispers, the words wrapping around your thoughts like vines. What hidden rivalry would it unearth in your own heart? The god turns toward you, perhaps through Yue's eyes, twin voids that draw in light, and he continues his sowing, sending tendrils of discord toward Totec's renewal halls, murmuring of cycles broken by false renewals into the trickster. Coyote's distant lairs amplifying deceptions already brewing. The balance of power teeters. Ancient mysteries of Aztec mythology, revealing Tezcatlipoca as the necessary antagonist. The force of destruction that ensures evolution. Much like the hurricanes that cleared paths for new growth in the tropical lowlands. His whispers gain volume, forming a symphony of insinuation that echoes through the cavern, challenging the pantheon's fragile harmony with visions of glory for those who heed him. As the night wears on, the mirrors fog with the heat of his machinations. Reflections distorting into scenes of potential alliances, Tezcatlipoca at the center, his stump foot gleaming as it anticipates steps forward. The air thickens with tension, the scent of copal intensifying as he performs a subtle ritual, tracing symbols in the air that send his words questing like hunting cats. You feel the unrest spreading, a ripple that will soon reach the council's echoes, pitting deity against deity in a web of suspicion. Heroes of lore, those mortal intermediaries who once bore messages between gods, would pale at such intrigue, their tales in the annals of Nahuatl poetry, warning of how whispers toppled empires from within. But the question that remains is, can the smoking mirror's shadows be dispelled by light? Or will they engulf the feathered serpent's hopeful vision before it even takes flight? Tezcatlipoca pauses, his laughter a soft rumble that vibrates the cavern walls. And he polishes his mirror with a swipe of his cloak, its surface clearing to show the first glimmers of response. Huitzilopochtli's grip tightening, a sign that the discord has taken root, pulling the pantheon toward the fury that simmers in the war god's core. Tezcatlipoca's laughter fades into the cavern's depths like a receding echo, but its vibration lingers, traveling on unseen winds to ignite the embers in distant realms, where Huitzilopochtli, the war god, feels the discord settle into his core like a spark on dry tinder. You sense the shift in the air, a sudden warmth cutting through the chill, as if the sun itself has dipped lower to peer into the shadows. Drawn by this magnetic pull, you traverse the ethereal boundaries, crossing veils of twilight that shimmer like heat haze over the Aztec highlands, until you arrive at the sun god's fiery citadel, a colossal pyramid ablaze with eternal flames, its steps ascending toward the zenith where light pierces the firmament. The ground here trembles faintly with each pulse of the sun's heart, and you inhale the sharp, invigorating scent of burning okota wood and spiced cacao, offerings that mortals heap upon altars to honor his unyielding vigil. You stand at the base of the pyramid, the heat radiating against your skin like a lover's urgent embrace as Huitzilopochtli manifests in full splendor, his form a towering warrior clad in hummingbird feathers that glint with iridescent greens and blues, a blue heron headdress, crowning his head, in his hands gripping a serpentine shield and Huitzilopochtli edged with obsidian teeth. His eyes blaze with solar fire, reflecting the inner turmoil stirred by Tezcatlipoca's whispers. And you feel the psychological intrigue of a deity on the cusp of action. that mortal-like surge of adrenaline, where doubt transmutes into resolve. Much like warriors in ancient battles steeling themselves against fear by embracing fury as a shield. In mainstream historical fact, it's recorded in the annals of Aztec priests during the empire's height in the 15th century. Huitzilopochtli was the patron of Tenochtitlan, guiding the Mexica people to their lake-bound city through omens of eagle and serpent. A local legend that tied his birth, fully armed from his mother Quetzalcoatl's womb, to the perpetual defense of the sun against devouring night forces. The war god rallies his forces now, his voice booming like the clash of thunder over the Valley of Mexico, interpreting the encroaching omens as calls to arms against the darkness that Tezcatlipoca embodies. You hear the summons ripple outward, a resonant call that stirs the ethereal hosts. Spectral eagles wheeling overhead with cries that pierce the night. Feathered serpents uncoiling from temple crevices and phantom warriors materializing from shafts of sunlight, their armor humming with latent energy. The air fills with the rhythmic stomp of divine feet on the pyramid's steps, a cadence that builds suspense methodically. Echoing the epic drumbeats of ceremonial processions where thousands marched in lockstep to appease the gods. Sensory details immerse youth, the crackle of flames leaping higher as offerings ignite the metallic temps of polished copper spears, and the faint acrid smoke from braziers where hearts of obsidian are symbolically offered, fueling his might without spilling a drop. Huitzilopochtli paces the apex as hummingbird wings, those bizarre, quirky extensions of his form, set in folklore to vibrate at frequencies that induce visions of impending battles in those who gaze to long fluttering, rapidly creating a hypnotic buzz that syncopates with your heartbeat. This artifact of his being, drawn from the myths where he slew his sister Quetzalcoatl and her 400 siblings at birth, wasn't just for flight. It could project illusions of solar flares to disorient foes, a detail that added an otherworldly edge to his warfare, making allies see paths to victory amid chaos. You watch as he interprets the omens, a sudden eclipse-like shadow creeping across his citadel's flames. Whispers from Tezcatlipoca twisting in his mind like smoke, the distant rumble from Tolok's storms now sounding like war drums. The darkness gathers, he declares to his assembling legions. His tone calm yet laced with rising fury, not as night, but as betrayal. We arm against it, for the sun does not yield. The psychological tension escalates. Gods and mortals alike, bound by the observation that fury often masks deeper vulnerabilities. The war god's unyielding light a bulwark against the void he fears, much like humans channeling anger to confront existential threats. Ancient mysteries of Aztec deities unfold as his forces coalesce, celestial coyotes howling challenges from the edges of the pyramid. Rain spirits lending their misty veils for camouflage, even reluctant nods from Quetzalcoatl's winds, carrying messages of alliance. You imagine yourself among the ranks, the heat pressing in. What fury would you summon if shadows encroached on your own light? The rally intensifies, Huitzilopochtli raising his shield to reflect the stars, twisting their patterns into battle maps where constellations align as spear points aimed at Tezcatlipoca's heartland. The epic cadence swells, methodical in its buildup, suspense threading through each command as he assigns Rolzagels to scout, serpents to strike, warriors to hold the line against the encroaching darkness that now manifests as coiling tendrils probing the citadel's barriers. Sensory immersion deepens, the whoosh of wings slicing air, the grind of obsidian on stone as weapons sharpen, and the collective breath of divine hosts held in anticipation, a hush broken only by the gods' rallying cry that reverberates like the sun's corona flaring. Local legends from the Codex Mendoza illustrate how Huitzilopochtli's festivals involve ritual races up temple steps, symbolizing the sun's daily battle, and here, that battle feels perilously close. The omens piling like storm clouds, fractured rainbows from Tlox's domain, mirrored reflections flickering unnaturally. The war god's fury builds to a crescendo, his feathers igniting with inner light, casting elongated shadows that dance like foes on the pyramid walls, preparing his forces not just for defense, but for a preemptive surge that could shatter the pantheon's fragile balance. As the rally peaks, Huitzilopochtli turns his gaze northward, where storm clouds brew unnaturally, Tlaloc's tempest carrying warnings that he interprets as battle cries, the whispers of discord now fueling a blaze that threatens to consume all in its path. The forces stand ready, shields gleaming. The air electric with purpose, a soft cliffhanger hanging in the charged silence before the first march. But the question that remains is, will this fury unite the pantheon under the sun's banner, or ignite the very sparks that Tezcatlipoca seeks to fan into an all-consuming blaze? The pyramid's flames leap higher, illuminating the path forward. Where rain and thunder await to test the warrior's resolve, the pyramid's flames cast flickering silhouettes against the gathering northern horizon, where Huitzilopochtli's eager gaze locks onto the burgeoning storm clouds. Their edges frayed like torn veils, swirling with an unnatural vigor that speaks of Tlatloc's agitation. You feel the air shift again, a cool draft slicing through the sun god's heat like a harbinger, pulling you northward across the ethereal plains where the sky meets the earth in a perpetual dance of rain and drought. The journey carries you through winds that whip with increasing force, bearing the salty tang of distant seas and the fresh ozone-laced promise of deluge, until you descend into Tlatloc's watery domain, a vast, mist-shrouded mountain grotto encircled by cascading waterfalls that plunge into crystalline pools, the air alive with the constant murmur of water shaping stone over eons. You stand at the grotto's threshold, the ground slick with perpetual moisture, as Tlaloc emerges from the depths of a central cenote, his colossal form rising like a tidal wave given life goggle-eyed mask of jade and turquoise, phalanges protruding in a perpetual snarl, body clad in a suit of serpentine shells that rattle with each heave. Water streams from his limbs, forming rivulets that snake across the mossy floor, and you sense the psychological weight upon him, the burden of a deity who sustains life, yet wields floods as judgment mirroring mortals. Dual capacity for nurture and wrath when pushed to extremes. In Aztec mythology, a mainstream historical fact preserved in the Codex Vaticanus, A from the 16th century. Tlaloc ruled the Tlalocan, a paradisiacal underworld for those who died by water, where he presided over 400 rain spirits. Tlalocu controlled the seasonal downpours essential to the Chinampa agriculture that fed the empire. Local legends from the mountains around Mount Tlaloc recount annual pilgrimages where priests ascended to his shrines, offering children in times of drought, a grim ritual underscoring his capricious mercy. The rain deity unleashes his tempests now, not in rage but in calculated warning, his goggle eyes flashing with stormlight as he raises arms adorned with conch shells that amplify his summons. You hear the first rumbles, deep and resonant, building from the grotto's core, like the earth's own heartbeat quickening. And the air thickens with humidity that clings to your skin, heavy with the earthy petrichor that precedes a downpour. Clouds coalesce overhead, darkening the realm into twilight and lightning veins, the sky in jagged blue. Each bolt a message etched in fire symbols of serpents coiling around crumbling pyramid suns, eclipsed by jaguar shadows and rivers of blood flowing backward toward the heavens. These tempests carry omens of impending doom to the mortal world below, where Aztec farmers in the Valley of Mexico pause their labors, feeling the first fat drops splash upon maize fields, interpreting the patterns as divine missives, a sudden hail that spares the crops but carves warnings into the mud, or winds that whisper Nahuatl phrases through village thatched roofs. Sensory details envelop youth, a relentless patter of rain intensifying to a roar, the chill mist that beads on your form like sacred dew, and the faint, briny scent of seas carried aloft by his breath, mingling with the subtle perfume of water lilies blooming unnaturally fast in the grotto pools. Tlaloc's voice booms through the gale, a guttural torrent that shapes the storm. The fractures widen, kin of sky and stone. Heed the water's cry, for doom laps at our shores. The psychological intrigue unfolds as he paces the Senate's edge, his movements deliberate yet laced with suspense, observing how gods like the mortals they shepherd wrestle with the foresight that breeds paralysis, the fear that warnings ignored could drown all in oblivion. His tempests sweep outward, brushing Huitzilopochtli's citadel with gusts that douse flames momentarily, carrying visions of flooded temples where divine thrones submerge, a subtle challenge to the war god's fiery resolve. While veering toward Tezcatlipoca's caverns to erode mirrors with relentless drizzle, blurring reflections of treachery, a quirky or bizarre detail reveals itself in the storm's heart. Tlaloc's conch shell earpieces are on mere adornments. They channel the echoes of ancient floods, replaying the screams of drowned worlds from previous suns as a haunting symphony during tempests. In artifact from folklore, that drove ritual dancers to ecstatic trances. Believing it allowed communion with the Tlaloc spirits who danced on rain clouds. You strained to hear it amid the thunder. Faint wails weaving through the wind, tales of cataclysms where gods clashed. And waters rose to claim the unworthy, amplifying the epic cadence of the unleashing. A methodical buildup where each peal of thunder underscores the message's gravity. Imagine you are caught in the downpour, the rain tracing cold paths down your back. What impending doom would you heed if the skies themselves spoke to you? The mortal world receives these harbingers vividly. In Tenochtitlan's markets, vendors huddle under awnings as thunder shapes omens in the steam rising from wet stones. Highland shamans versed in local legends of Tlaloc,'s double aspect as giver and taker divine from puddle. Reflections the silhouette of battling deities, their chants rising to plead for balance. The unleashing escalates. Tlaloc summoning his 400 rain children, ethereal figures of mist and lightning, who scatter the tempests like arrows from a bow, directing bolts toward the pantheon's fringes. A warning flash near Quetzalcoatl's array that singes feathers. A flood tide lapping at Xipe-Totec's renewal altars to symbolize cycles interrupted. Ancient mysteries of Aztec lore surface in the deluge, drawing parallels to the deities' intertwined fates, where rain sustains, yet storms destroy, much like the human psyche balancing hope against despair. The grotto trembles as the rain deity channels more power, his shells rattling in a frenzied rhythm. The air electric with the scent of ionized air and crushed herbs from submerged gardens. Suspense coils tighter, the messages painting a tapestry of doom, realms overlapping in watery chaos, immortals caught in divine crossfires, and a great unraveling where the fifth sun's light drowns in nocturnal tides. As the tempests rage, Tlaloc pauses at the senate's brim, gazing into its depths, where his reflection fractures into myriad storms. The warning's now a chorus that echoes across realms, urging preparation or peril. The mortal world stirs below, priests in flooded causeways, offering jade beads to calm the waters, their pleas mingling with the gale's howl. A soft bridge to the rituals that will soon attempt to staunch the bleeding cosmos. But the question that remains is, will these stormy messages rally the gods to renewal, or merely hasten the discord that Tezcatlipoca's shadows crave to exploit? The rain eases fractionally, clouds parting to reveal glimpses of golden light from distant renewal rites, where flayed skins gleam with the promise of rebirth amid the gathering gloom. The clouds part further, allowing shafts of golden light to pierce the lingering mist like spears of hesitant dawn, guiding your gaze eastward to the verdant groves, where renewal rites hold sway. The gleam of flayed skins catching the rays as if beckoning the pantheon from the brink of discord. You feel the subtle tug, a verdant warmth cutting through Tlaloc-'s chill, drawing you across dew-kissed fields, and vine-draped arches into the sacred heartland of Xipe-Totec, the flayed lord. The air here softens, infused with the sweet resinous aroma of maize husks and blooming marigolds mingled with the faint, metallic undertone of fresh earth turned for planting, a realm where decay feeds, growth cycles turning eternally like the wheel of seasons in the Aztec highlands. You enter a circular clearing ringed by altars of woven reeds and polished maize cobs. The ground carpeted in vibrant tapestries of shed skins that crinkle underfoot like autumn leaves. Xipe-Totec presides at the center, his form a mesmerizing paradox, golden skin layered over his divine frame like a living garment. Eyes warm yet distant behind a mask of woven fibers, embodying the essence of sacrifice that renews. His movements are deliberate, a dance of grace amid tension. And you sense the psychological depth in him, the quiet contemplation of a deity who understands that transformation demands surrender. Much like mortals shedding old selves in moments of profound change, emerging stronger yet scarred. In mainstream historical accounts from the Florentine Codex compiled by Franciscan friars in the mid-16th century, Xipe-Totec was central to the Tezcatlipoca festival, where priests donned flayed skins of captives to symbolize the earth's renewal, a local legend from the spring equinox rituals in Tenochtitlan that promised bountiful harvests through mimetic magic binding gods and humans in the dance of life from death. The flayed lord initiates the ritual now, meant to rejuvenate the gods amid the rising fractures. His voice a soothing murmur that resonates like wind through cornstalks, calling the pantheon to this verdant sanctum. You watch as he begins, circling the central altar, where a massive maize effigy pulses within her light, his golden skin shifting, subtly, peeling and reforming, in a mesmerizing cycle that evokes the Earth's rebirth after winter's grasp. The air hums with building energy, sensory details unfolding. The soft rustle of fibers in his headdress as he raises arms adorned with jade beads that chime like distant bells. The earthy scent intensifying as he scatters seeds into ritual fires, their pops and crackles, releasing vapors that swirl upward in spirals of gold and green. Whispers from Tezcatlipoca's shadows and Tezcatlipoca's storms fade here, momentarily subdued by the rite's promise. As ethereal tendrils extend from the clearing, inviting Huitzilopochtli's fire, Quetzalcoatl's winds to partake in the mending. Zyp-Totec chants in rhythmic nahuatl, his words weaving spells of cohesion. From flaying comes fertility, from fracture, fusion let the old skins fall, new strength arise. The psychological intrigue builds as the ritual delves into the minds of the absent gods, probing their resistances. Huitzilopochtli's fury softening in visions of verdant battlefields. Tlaloc's tempests calming to nourishing rains, each rejuvenation a subtle observation on how deities like mortals cling to rigid forms until crisis forces evolution. You feel the rite's pull, the air warming with a gentle heat that seeps into your bones, evoking the epic cadence of ancient ceremonies where thousands gathered at spring festivals, their drums syncing with heartbeats to invoke cosmic balance. But as the chant deepens, the maize effigy glows brighter, its kernels bursting open to release pollen that drifts like golden snow, carrying the ritual's essence to distant realms, coding Tezcatlipoca's mirrors in a film that blurs his whispers, greening the edges of Huitzilopochtli's flames. A quirky or bizarre detail emerges in the ritual's core, Zyp-Totec's woven mask. Not a simple veil, but an artifact infused with the essence of shed eagle feathers and serpent scales. Shifts patterns during rites to reveal hidden glyphs, prophetic symbols that dance across its surface. Foretelling outcomes like blooming fields or barren wastes, peculiar trait from folklore that made wearers see the future in the weave's threads, though prolonged exposure caused visions to bleed into waking hallucinations. You gaze at it now, the glyphs flickering, serpents entwining suns. Rains feeding roots that pierce obsidiana, bizarre interplay that adds layers to the rejuvenation, as if the mask itself breathes life into the spell. Sensory immersion heightens the pollen's sweet, dusty taste on the tongue. The rhythmic sway of vines overhead releasing dewdrops that patter like applause, and the subtle vibration of the ground as forbidden energies stir beneath, unnoticed at first amid the rite's harmony. Imagine you are woven into the circle, your form dusted with pollen. What old skin would you shed to embrace this renewal, standing amid gods on the cusp of unity? The ritual swells, Zyp-Totec, invoking the Tlaloc to join in a misty veil that encircles the altars, blending water with earth in a fertile embrace. While Quetzalcoatl's dream visions manifest as feathered auras hovering above, promising a mended pantheon, ancient mysteries of Aztec lore surface in the proceedings. The flayed lord's domain, a microcosm of the world's cyclical nature, where sacrifice symbolic here ensures the fifth sun's continuance. Much like the human drive to reinvent amid adversity, suspense coils methodically as the energies converge, the clearing pulsing with light that pushes back the gloom. Rejuvenating fragments of divine essences, Tezcatlipoca's shadows paling to mere silhouettes, Huitzilopochtli's rage channeling into protective fervor. Yet as the chant reaches its zenith, a subtle tremor ripples through the ground, not the earth's grateful sigh, but something deeper. Older, the awakening of forbidden energies, tendrils of primal chaos seeping from cracks in the soil, drawn by the rite's intensity like moths to flame. The pollen swirls erratically, the mask's glyphs twisting into ominous shapes, coiling voids that swallow light, whispers of unmaking echoing faintly. Zyp-Totec pauses, his golden skin flickering as if resisting the pull, the air now laced with an acrid undercurrent beneath the sweetness, hinting at forces beyond renewal's grasp. The ritual's promise teeters, the rejuvenation summoning not just healing, but the primordial unrest that Quetzalcoatl first glimpsed. A soft unraveling where energies meant to bind begin to fray the seams. But the question that remains is, can the flayed lord contain these forbidden stirrings? Will they twist the right into a catalyst for the deceptions that the trickster coyote eagerly awaits in the wings? The golden light dims slightly at the edges, vines whispering warnings as the clearing's pulse quickens, pulling toward the cunning plots that lurk in the twilight's embrace. The clearing's pulse quickens beneath your feet, the vine's whispers twisting into sly murmurs that slither away from Zyptotec's right, guiding you through tangled underbrush and fading golden light toward the twilight fringes where boundaries blur between realms. The air cools to a mischievous chill, carrying the playful yet ominous scent of mesquite smoke and wild berries. Crushed under paw. As you enter, coyotes' wandering domena, labyrinthian, badlands of shifting dunes, and thorn-choked arroyos, where the landscape itself seems to smirk under the emerging moon. Shadows play tricks here, lengthening into shapes that mimic watchful eyes. You feel the psychological shift, the unease of stepping into a world where nothing is as it seems, much like mortals navigating rumors in crowded markets, where a single jest can unravel trusts long nurtured. You spot the trickster figure amid a cluster of twisted acacia trees, his form a lean, russet-furred coyote god, lounging on a boulder, tail flicking lazily as if the chaos brewing elsewhere amuses him greatly. Coyote's eyes gleam with amber cunning, his muzzle curled in an eternal half-grin. Clad in a patchwork of stolen feathers and jade scraps that jingle softly with each subtle shift, he embodies the Aztec archetype of the picaresque deceiver, a force of disruption that tests the pantheon's resolve, and you sense his delight in the forbidden. Energies stirred by Zyptotec's ritual, those primordial tendrils now feeding his whims like kindling to a spark. In mainstream historical lore from the Popol Vuh influences, blended into tales stirring the empire's expansion in the 14th century. Coyote served as a mediator in creation myth, sometimes allying with humans against gods, a local legend from the northern deserts around the Chichimac regions recounting how he stole fire from Talak, grasped sharing it with mortals to teach that cleverness trumps might, though at the cost of eternal suspicion among the deities. The trickster weaves his web of deception on this eve of conflict, his paws tracing patterns in the sand that glow faintly. Ephemeral sigils that capture echoes of the pantheon's tensions, Tezcatlipoca's whispers. Huitzilopochtli's rally, Tlaloc's storms twisting them into illusions designed to manipulate alliances. You watch as he begins, his voice a sly yip that carries on the wind. Low and coaxing, summoning spectral threads from the air that form a shimmering net, invisible to all but the keen-eyed. The badlands hum with building suspense, sensory details unfolding. The dry rasp of thorns scraping stone, the tangy bite of sagebrush in the breeze, and the distant howl of his lesser kin, echoing his chuckles, a chorus that lulls the unwary. These threads quest outward, snaking toward the realms, one tendril coiling around. It slopes she's shield to plant visions of Tezcatlipoca, offering secret pacts against Quetzalcoatl's weak benevolence. Another draping Tlaloc's grotto with mirages of Zyptotec hoarding renewal for himself, fostering envy where unity once flickered. Coyote's cunning plot unfolds methodically, his form blurring as he darts between trees, paws blurring the sigils to refine the deceptions each illusion. A psychological snare that preys on divine egos, the war goddess, pride, swelling with false assurances of supremacy, the rain deity's caution turning to paranoia of betrayal. You feel the intrigue deepen, observing how tricksters like Coyote mirror mortal con artists, thriving on the gaps in perception where doubt breeds division. Their game's a commentary on the fragility of alliances when power is at stake. The epic cadence builds in his playful yet perilous dance, the air thickening with the scent of ozone from the sigil's magic, as he incorporates the forbidden energies from the right dark wisps that empower the threads making illusions. More tangible whispers that mimic the god's own voices to sow discord on the eve when conflict looms largest. A quirky or bizarre detail reveals itself in Coyote's toolkit. His tail, not just an appendage, but an enchanted artifact woven with threads from spider silk and stolen starlight, can extend to ensnare thoughts mid-air, replaying them as altered echoes that convince the victim of fabricated memories, a peculiar trait from folklore where he once tricked the moon into hiding by tail-snaring its reflection, causing eclipses that mortals attributed to godly quarrels, though the tail's overuse left it singed and unpredictable. You see it now, the tail lashing out to catch a passing wind from Quetzalcoatl's eyrie, twisting the feathered serpent's hopeful dream into a nightmare of isolation. The altered echo drifting back laced with coyotes yip. Even your visions betray you with me, or fade alone. Sensory immersion heightens, the warm sand shifting underfoot like living breath, the faint acrid tang of the sigils burning out after their task. And the rustle of feathers in his patchwork as he weaves faster, the net expanding to encompass the pantheon's edges, pulling alliances taut like bowstrings ready to snap. Imagine you are caught in one of these threads, the illusion wrapping around your mind. What deception would you unravel first amid the gods' mounting suspicions? Ancient mysteries of Aztec legends surface in the plot. Coyote as the chaotic neutral force, ensuring that no pact forms without test. Much like the human tales of jesters in royal courts, whose jests expose tyrants, the eve of conflict heightens the stakes, his web intersecting. Tezcatlipoca's shadows to amplify mutual manipulations, mirrors reflecting false alliances. Storms carrying doctored omens while sparing Zype. Totec's groves a lighter touch, draping vines, with illusions of blooming betrayals to erode the ritual's fragile peace. Suspense coils as the trickster pauses atop his boulder. Ears perk to the responses, Huitzilopochtli's distant roar of confusion. Tlalic's thunder cracking unnaturally, each tug on the web eliciting his gleeful bark. The plot thickens under the rising moon, Cod's eyes narrowing as he adjusts a central sigil.
Oh.
The forbidden energies pulsing brighter, threatening to overcharge the deceptions into self-fulfilling prophecies where manipulated gods clash prematurely. The Badlands seem to hold their breath, thorns stilling, the howls fading to a whisper, as the web hums with potential poised to ensnare the unwary on this precarious night. Yet, a faint glow from ancient codices stirs in the distance, their pages rustling as if awakening to counter the trickery, hinting at prophecies that may yet pierce the veil of lies. But the question that remains is, will Coyote's cunning unravel the Pantheon's threads before they tighten into battle lines? Or will the codices' secrets expose the trickster's paw in the gathering storm? The moon climbs higher, casting silvery light on the web's gleam,
Out there.
drawing eyes toward the unveiling that no deception can fully shroud. The moon's silvery light dances across Coyote's web, highlighting its silken strands like veins of quicksilver, but a deeper luminescence stirs from the shadowed alcoves of the Badlands where ancient codicea song dormant and hidden. Sanctuaries begin to flutter as if breathing in the night's intrigue. You feel the pull, a resonant hum that vibrates through the earth, severing Coyote's deceptions momentarily as it draws you eastward once more, past the trickster's snarl of frustration, toward the grand archive of divine lore, a cavernous library hewn from the cliffs of the sacred mountains. Its walls lined with shelves of amit bark and deerskin scrolls, illuminated by ever-burning braziers of copal and turquoise. The air grows thick with the musty scent of aged paper and incense, mingled with the faint electric tang of awakening magic, as if the very words inscribed by priest-scribes eons ago yearn to break free. You enter the archive's heart, the ground sloping into a circular chamber where a central pedestal cradles the most revered codex, the Tonal Pahuli, a calendar wheel etched with fates and omens. The pages stir without touch, folding and unfolding like the wings of a great moth, and you sense the psychological threshold crossing, that mortal thrill of forbidden knowledge unveiling itself. Much like scholars poring over texts in dimly lit chambers, hearts racing as patterns emerge from chaos to redefine their world. As chronicled in the surviving Aztec codices like the Codex Borbonicus from the late 15th century, these painted books served as sacred repositories, guiding rituals through the 260-day Tonopoli cycle, where each day bore a unique destiny, blending astronomy and divination. Local legend from the priestly schools of Comicac and Tenochtitlan held that the codices could waken during cosmic alignments, their illustrations animating to counsel rulers on impending upheavals, such as the fall of previous empires. Yet the prophecy unveils itself now, codices coming alive in a cascade of glowing pigments that leap from the pages like living ink, forming holographic visions that swirl around you in the chamber. You stand transfixed as the illustrations coalesce, feathered serpents clashing with smoke and mirrors, suns engulfed by jaguar shadows, rains cascading into abyssal voids, all converging in a cataclysmic battle that could shatter the celestial order. The air pulses with the soft rustle of pages turning autonomously. Sensory details enveloping youth, the warm flicker of braziers, casting elongated shadows that mimic the codex's scenes, the subtle crackle of ink igniting into ethereal sparks, and the low chant emanating from the scrolls themselves. A Nahuatl incantation that echoes like whispers from the ancestors, detailing the unraveling of the fifth sun's guardians. Quetzalcoatl's dream fragments flicker here, Tezcatlipoca's whispers twist into scripted fates. And even Coyote's web appears as a fleeting glyph, a thread in the larger tapestry of doom. The epic cadence builds methodically, suspense rising as the prophecy discloses layer by layer, the battle foretold as the Nahui Olin. The earthquake's sun's final quake, where gods must contend, not just with each other but with the primordial forces Zyptotec unwittingly stirred. Their clash, risking the dissolution of the divine hierarchy into scattered essences. Psychological intrigue weaves through the visions, the codices probing the gods. Huitzilopochtli's fury depicted as a blinded charge into night. Talaka's warnings as futile waves against unyielding stone, observing how immortals bound by prophecy grapple. With predestination, much like mortals consulting oracles torn between defiance and surrender. You feel the weight, the air growing heavier, with each revealed panel the sense intensifying to include the faint herbal bite of Tezcatlipoca. Incense used in divinations as the central codex unfurls fully, its central wheels spinning slowly to align symbols. A fractured pyramid at the apex encircled by deities and poses of conflict, their forms blurring into a vortex that threatens the stars themselves. A quirky or bizarre detail materializes in the codex's heart, the tonal pahuli's central disc. Not mere parchment, but an artifact embedded with flecks of sacred obsidian and Quetzal down, which during awakenings projects, tactile illusions, visitors could feel the earthquake tremors through the air or the chill of encroaching shadows, a peculiar enchantment from legend that once caused a high priest to vanish into the page re-emerging, days later with visions of unmade worlds. Though the disc's power left faint, prophecy-scented marks on the skin like temporary tattoos. You reach out instinctively, your fingers brushing the projection, and a shiver courses through you, the tactile quake rumbling softly. Shadows coiling coolly around your wrist as the prophecy deepens, the battle's sight shifting between realms. From the sun's zenith to Shabalba's depths, demanding sacrifices not of blood, but of power, where victors might ascend as solitary rulers, but at the cost of the pantheon's eternal song. Imagine you are inscribed in this unveiling, the ink brushing your thoughts. What facet of the celestial order would you fight to preserve amid the shattering? Ancient mysteries of Aztec mythology illuminate the scenes, codices as bridges between eras, revealing how prophecies like the five suns cycle warned of recurring destruction's jaguar, wind, rain, fire, and now earthquake, ensuring evolution through annihilation, a mirror to human histories of rise and ruin. The visions accelerate, pages flipping in a whirlwind, alliances fracturing under the weight of foretold betrayals, forbidden energies manifesting as colossal serpents, devouring temple peaks in a final convergence where the gods' essences collide in a blaze that could remake or unmake the cosmos. Suspense coils tighter, the braziers flaring brighter to illuminate grim details mortals glimpsed in the margins. Their fates entangled as echoes of the divine strife bleed into earthly realms, priests in the visions clutching codices of their own pleading against the tide. The prophecy culminates in a resounding hush, the wheel halting on the earthquake symbol, chamber vibrating with residual energy as the inks settle back onto the pages, leaving the air humming with unspoken implications. The celestial order feels palpably fragile now, the unveiling a beacon that pierces. Coyote's deceptions and rallies, distant realms Quetzalcoatl's feathers rustling in response, Huitzilopochtli's flames leaping toward the archive's gloyette. It sows a deeper dread, the battle's shadow lengthening overall. The codex's final glyph fades, a question mark in serpentine form, hinting at the human pleas that will soon amplify the gods' turmoil. But the question that remains is, will this unveiled prophecy forge a desperate unity among the deities, or accelerate the fractures that propel them toward mortal destinies? The braziers dim to embers, the chamber's echoes carrying faint cries from the world below. Where priests sense the shift and begin their invocations, the first bleed of divine strife into human hearts. The chamber's echoes swell into a chorus of distant cries, threading through the stone-like veins awakening, pulling you from the archive's hushed sanctity downward through the veils that separate the divine from the mortal coil. You descend into the mortal world, the ethereal hum fading as the tangible clamor of human life envelops you, the murmur of Lake Texcoco's lapping waters against Chinampa rafts, the distant toll of Huitzilopochtli drums from temple precincts, and the acrid bite of sacrificial smoke curling from countless braziers in the sprawling city of Tenochtitlan. The night air is alive with unrest, stars wheeling overhead in patterns that seem to pulse with the gods. Fractures and you stand amid the shadowed causeways, feeling the divine strife begin to bleed into human destinies, like ink seeping through parchment. You hear the pleas of Aztec priests first, as faint whispers rising from the Great Pyramid's base, where black-robed figures, clad in feathered mantles, huddle in sacred enclosures, their faces painted with soot and ochre to ward off the omens. The air trembles with their chants, a rhythmic cadence in Nahuatl that blends supplication and dread. O Huitzilopochtli, shield the sun from shadows. O Tlaloc, temper your tears to nourish rather than drown. Sensory details sharpen the scene, the damp chills seeping from the lake carrying the fishy temps of tilapia. Nets and the sweet rot of overripe cacao pods discarded in the markets. The soft patter of feet on raised walkways as apprentices carry bundles of copal incense, their young voices joining the elders in harmonious plea. These priests, guardians of the divine human bridge, sense the cosmic bleed. A star flickering erratically, mirroring Quetzalcoatl's troubled visions. Winds gusting unnaturally from Tezcatlipoca's direction, laden with whispers that twist into audible doubts in mortal ears. The psychological intrigue unfolds among them, mortals not unlike gods in their capacity for fear-fueled resolve. Gathering in circles around scrying pools where water reflections warp under, the strife is influence showing glimpses of jaguar forms, prowling ethereal edges, rains falling upward in reverse tempests. In mainstream historical fact, as detailed in the writings of Hernan Court's chroniclers during the 1521 siege of Tenochtitlan, Aztec priests maintained a vigilant priesthood that interpreted omens through ritual observation, such as the flight of Quetzal birds or the patterns in sacrificial victims' entrails. A practice rooted in the empire's theocratic structure where a divine will dictate daily life. Local legends from the island city's founding myth preserved in oral traditions spoke of how the Mexica consulted priestly augurs when the Egalon cactus sign appeared, their pleas ensuring the gods' favor amid floods and famines. Now those same augurs tremble the bleed, manifesting as shared nightmares were deities. Clash in dreamscapes, waking the priests in sweats, convinced the fifth sun teeters. You move closer to a cluster of senior priests atop a lesser temple there, pleas intensifying as they unfurl a small codex. Under torchlight, its pages illuminated by flames that leap erratically, echoing the codex's awakening in the divine archive. One elder, his eyes lined with the wisdom of countless moons, intones a litany against the strife. Tezcatlipoca, veil your mirrors from deceit. Sipe Totec, bind our skins to your renewal. The group kneels, passing a vessel of pulque that ferments with sacred herbs, its sharp, yeasty scent mingling with the incense to induce visions. And you hear the pleas evolve into personal confessions, fears of harvest failures if Tlaloc storms rage unchecked. Visions of warriors faltering under Huitzilopochtli's dimming light, the divine fractures seeping into their psyches like a contagion, stirring doubts about the gods' benevolence. Imagine you are one of them, the pulque warming your throat. What plea would rise from your lips as the stars seem to weep tears of light? A quirky or bizarre detail emerges in their ritual, the priests' obsidian earplugs. Not mere adornments, but artifacts carved from Tezcatlipoca's own mirrored shards, said to amplify divine whispers during pleas, sometimes replaying them backward as eerie prophecies, a peculiar trait from temple lore where a priest once heard a reversed omen foretelling a bountiful year, only for it to manifest as a famine when interpreted amiss, leaving the plugs humming with residual echoes that could drive the unwary to mutter in tongues. You lean in, and there it is, the faint, reversed murmur weaving through their chants, twisting coyotes' deceptions into mortal warnings. knock knock, etnistl of floods in the night. A bizarre inversion that heightens the suspense. As if the gods' intrigue rebounds upon their worshippers, blurring the line between celestial council and human hearth. The epic cadence of their pleas builds methodically, voices rising in waves that crash against the night. Carrying across the causeways to stir families in reed-thatched homes, children whispering of shadowy dreams, elders recounting legends of previous world endings where gods' quarrels drown cities. Ancient mysteries of Aztec deities bleed vividly here. The priest's invocations, a microcosm of the pantheon's turmoil. Observing how mortals, ever the echo of immortals, mirror divine rivalries in their communal anxieties, forging resilience from shared dread. Sensory immersion deepens, the torch smoke's stinging eyes, the collective breath held during a sudden gust that scatters codex pages, revealing sketches of battling gods that seem to move in the firelight, urging more fervent pleas. The strife's bleed accelerates. Omens multiplying, a macaw's cry, twisting into a human scream. Lake waters rippling with unseen serpents, prompting the priests to escalate, anointing one another with blood from pricked fingers, symbolic offerings to staunch the flow. As the night wears on, their pleas resonate outward, reaching the divine realms in faint harmonics, Quetzalcoatl's feathers quivering in response. Tezcatlipoca's mirrors clouding with mortal fervor, yet the bleed persists. Human destinies entwining tighter with the gods, families gathering in homes to echo the chants, the city's pulse syncing with the cosmic unrest. Suspense coils as a priest uncovers a hidden glyph in the codex, depicting mortals caught in the battle's fringes, their fates as pawns or saviors undetermined. The pleas now laced with urgent calls for alliances that mirror the pantheon's own forging. But the question that remains is, can these mortal echoes bridge the divine rifts with their earnest pleas? Or will they merely amplify the strife until human hands grasp at the threads of celestial fire? The torches flare brighter, casting long shadows that dance like forging flames, drawing the first uneasy pacts among the gods in response to the rising tide of human invocation. The torches in Tenochtitlan's temples flare brighter still, their flames leaping as if fed by the priests. Fervent invocations, the shadows twisting into serpentine forms that ascend like prayers bridging. The mortal clamor to the divine heights where gods convene once more. You ascend with them, the human pleas echoing in your wake like a persistent drumbeat, carrying you back to the obsidian amphitheater where the fractured council reconvenes under a sky streaked with auroral veins. Remnants of the Codex's unveiling now pulsing with urgency. The air thrums with residual magic laced with the smoky residue of earthly incense and the metallic edge of forging. Energies as the deities gather, their forms materializing amid the mortal tide that swells like an undercurrent, compelling uneasy alignments in the face of prophesied doom. You stand at the circle's edge, the ground quivering faintly as the gods align in pacts, their temples trembling with the weight of sworn oaths that bind essence to essence. Quetzalcoatl coils at the forefront, his feathers still dusted with the codex's pollen, extending tendrils of wind that weave through the assembly, offering visions of shared renewal to temper the strife. Huitzilopochtli responds, first his solar aura dimming slightly in deference. Clasping the feathered serpent's offered talon in a grip that sparks like flint on steel, their pact forged in the fire of mutual vigilance against Tezcatlipoca's encroaching night, a vow to hold the sun's path unyielding. Tlaloc emerges from swirling mists, his conch shells dripping with restrained tempests. Allying with Zyptotec in a watery embrace that merges rain with flayed renewal, promising floods turn to fertile mists for the pantheon's sustenance. The amphitheater's walls shudder. Distant temples and the mortal realm pyramids of Teotihuacan and Tula vibrating in sympathy, as if the oath's gravity pulls the earth upward towards celestial accord. Sensory details envelop you, the hot breath of Huitzilopochtli, as flames licking the cool drafts from Quetzalcoatl's wings, creating steam that carries the sweet char of roasting maize from human altars below. The subtle grind of obsidian thrones shifting under divine weights, echoing like bones settling after a quake. And the collective hum of oaths spoken in layered nahuatl, voices overlapping in harmonious tension, each word sealing bonds that feel as fragile as spider silk stretched across a gale. The psychological intrigue deepens amid these alignments, gods observing in their immortals' ways. how necessity forges reluctant kinships. Much like mortals in tribal councils during sieges, where old enmities yield to survival's demand yet doubts linger like shadows at noon. Tezcatlipoca lingers at the periphery, his mirror dimmed by the codex's light, forced to feign alliance with Coyote's sly input. Their pact a veiled murmur of shared deceptions to test the true, though his stumpfoot taps impatiently, reflecting fractures in the unity. The uneasy pacts solidify one by one, temples trembling more insistently, the Great Pyramid in Tenochtitlan swaying as Huitzilopochtli's oath resonates, causing priests to redouble their pleas, sensing the divine strain. Quetzalcoatl and Tlaloc bind next, winds cradling rain to form iridescent veils that shield against forbidden energies, their vow invoking the balance of sky and storm, while Zyptotec encircles the group, his golden skin shedding flecks that anoint the oaths like sacred oil, rejuvenating essences frayed by intrigue. Even Coyote darts in, his tail flicking to weave illusory threads that promise clever escapes from the prophecy's clutches, allying loosely with the whole under the guise of comic relief, though his eyes gleam with unspoken contingencies. The epic cadence swells methodically, suspense threading through each clasp and murmured the air electric, with the scent of ozone from clashing auras. As the oath's weight causes the amphitheater's floor to crack faintly, golden fissures glowing with bound power. A quirky or bizarre detail surfaces in the forging. Huitzilopochtli's serpentine shield. It's not just armor but an artifact humming with the captured essences of slain stars. Vibrates during pacts to emit a low, melodic tone that harmonizes oaths. Yet if discord creeps in, it reverses to a dissonant waila, peculiar trait from Aztec temple lore, where priests used replicas in ceremonies, believing the tone could bind souls or unravel them, once causing a ritual to collapse into chaos when a lie tainted the vow, leaving echoes that haunted the sanctuary for moons. You hear it now, the shield's hum, rising pure and steady, syncing with the gods' breaths, but with a subtle undernote hinting at the unease. As Tezcatlipoca's mirror catches distorted reflections of the pack's hands clasping in one, turning to claws in another, amplifying the psychological strain where trust wars with ancient grudges. Imagine you are woven into these oaths, your essence touched by the golden flecks. What pact would you swear amid the trembling realms, balancing loyalty against the prophecy's inexorable pull? Ancient mysteries of Aztec deities reveal themselves in the alignments, the pacts echoing the historical flower wars ex Iota where Mexico warriors fought, not for conquest but to capture sacrifices, forging temporary truces with rival city-states to maintain cosmic balance, a local legend from the Codex Duran, illustrating how such bonds sustain the empire's rituals, now mirrored in the gods' celestial diplomacy. The temple's tremors spread, mortal seers in distant villages feeling the quakes as signs, their pleas evolving to include vows of fidelity to the pantheon, human destinies entwining deeper with divine resolves. Suspense builds as the final oath circles back to Quetzalcoatl, all eyes upon him to seal the circle, his feathers whispering callbacks to the primordial stirrings, the codex's prophecies, and the priest's echoes that birthed this moment. Yet as the hum peaks and the fissures seal with a resonant glow, a shadow flickers in Tezcatlipoca's mirror seen by most. But you catch it, a constellation shifting against the pack's light, exposing the first threads of treachery woven into the stars themselves. The alliances hold, temples steadying with a collective sigh. But the weight of oaths hangs heavy, poised for the celestial omens that will test their fragility. But the question that remained was, how long can these fire-forged pacts withstand the stars' silent accusations before betrayals carve paths through the divine night? The amphitheater quiets, the gods dispersing to their realms with bound steps. The air now charged with the scent of smoldering promises, leading toward the stellar whispers that betray even the most solemn vows. The amphitheater's charged silence stretches like a taut bowstring as the gods disperse to their realms, their bound steps echoing faintly into the void, leaving you alone beneath the vaulted sky where the air still hums with the scent of smoldering promises and the subtle ozone of forged essences. You tilt your gaze upward, drawn by an inexplicable pull, as the constellations begin their subtle dance, a celestial ballet that twists the night's canopy, stars wheeling in patterns no mortal eye has charted. The darkness above feels alive, pulsing with the weight of the packs below. And you sense the psychological undercurrent, that immortal game of trust and deception, where even the heavens conspire. Much like allies in shadowed councils, exchanging glances heavy with unspoken intents, celestial omens betray secrets now, the constellations shifting to expose treacheries among immortals, their lights flaring and dimming like accusatory fingers pointing through the ether. You watch as the Pleiades, known in Aztec lore as the seven wives of the morning star, flicker erratically, their cluster fracturing to mimic Quetzalcoatl's feathers molting under strain, revealing a hidden pact S-fracture, where Tezcatlipoca, its influence lingers as whispers, having seeded doubt in the feathered serpent's windle eyes during the oath's sealing. The air cools, carrying the crisp bite of high-altitude frost, mingling with the faint, starry Thames of cosmic dust that prickles your skin.
S.
Azorian's Beltrevered as the hunter in ancient skies tilts unnaturally, its stars aligning to form a jagged mirror shape, casting Tezcatlipoca's own emblem across the heavens, betraying his feigned allegiance as a reflection shows him consulting Coyote in a sidelong gleam, their silhouettes etched in negative space against the Milky Way. Sensory details immerse you in the unveiling, the soft whoosh of solar winds brushing the amphitheater's rim,
Owl-like.
breaths held too long, the low vibration of shifting stars humming in your chest, syncing with the distant mortal drums from Tenochtitlan's precincts, where priests glimpse the same omens and redouble their pleas, and the visual feast of constellations rearranging. Lines connecting to draw forbidden bonza, line from Huitzilopochtli's solar throne, arcing to Tlaloc's watery domain, only to sever midway, exposing the rain god's private reservations about the war god's fiery dominance. A treachery whispered in storm clouds during the pack's fervor. The epic cadence builds methodically, suspense coiling as each shift peels back layers of deception, the god's realms stirring in response to Quetzalcoatl's, airy winds gusting with alarm. Huitzilopochtli's citadel flames sputtering as if choked by doubt, observing how deities, bound by celestial oversight, navigate the psychological labyrinth of loyalty, their immortals' pride clashing with the fear of exposure like mortals under scrutiny in imperial courts. In mainstream historical fact, Aztec astronomers from the House of Comicac in 15th century, Tenochtitlan meticulously tracked the heavens using the 365-day Shupawali calendar, interpreting constellations as divine missives during solstices. A local legend from the Codex Borgia, depicting how the star bundle of Huitzilopochtli guided nocturnal rituals, warning of upheavals when alignments betrayed the gods' harmony, much as now the stars conspire to unravel the fragile packs. You feel the betrayal deepen, the sky's narrative unfolding like a living codex. The Scorpion constellation, guardian of Tezcatlipoca's night, swells to encompass Zyptotec's renewal groves, its tail curving to reveal illusory vines from Coyote's web still clinging, exposing the flayed lord's ritual as unwittingly laced with trickster sabotage, energies twisted to sap rather than rejuvenate. The psychological intrigue intensifies, immortals sensing the omen's gaze, prompting internal reckonings to Tezcatlipoca, polishing his mirror to deflect the star's judgment. Yet its surface cracks faintly under the scrutiny, reflecting not just secrets but the cost of concealment. A quirky or bizarre detail gleams in the cosmic drama, the Jaguar constellation. A stellar map of Tezcatlipoca's feline aspect isn't static but winks with embedded meteor shards that, during betrayals, release phantom roars audible only to gods, peculiar artifact from heavenly lore where these roars once echoed during the fourth sun's Jaguar destruction, driving deities to hasty retreats, though prolonged listening could imprint starry paw prints on the listener's aura, marking them as exposed. You hear it faintly now, a guttural rumble threading through the winds as the Jaguar swells, its roar betraying Coyote's full collusion with the smoking mirror, the stars outlining their clandestine exchange of forbidden energies post-oath. A treachery that sends ripples through the pantheon winds howling protests from Quetzalcoatl's direction, flames flaring in Huitzilopochtli's realm as if scorched by betrayal's heat. Imagine you are etched among these stars, your form a constellation in the fray. What secret would the heavens expose in your light to test the immortals' bonds? Ancient mysteries of Aztec deities illuminate the shifts, the celestial vault as a grand stage where treacheries play out eternally. mirroring the human penchant for hidden agendas that fracture societies, from tribal feuds to empire's fall. Suspense mounts as further omens cascade. The serpent-bearer uncoils to encircle Tlaloc's tempests, revealing his stormy warnings as veiled barters for greater dominion over waters. While the warrior Huitzilopochtli's emblem splinters, exposing his rally as fueled not just by duty but by ambitions to eclipse all other lights. The sky trembles, a soft meteor shower tracing the betrayal's paths. Each streak a whisper of the prophecy's acceleration, the Pax temples quaking anew in the mortal world as seers cry out. Their pleas now laced with accusations against the stars themselves. The constellations stabilize at last, but not in harmony. Their new alignment, a mocking tapestry of fractured lines, secrets, laid bare like exposed veins. The air now, heavy with the chill of cosmic judgment, gods withdrawing further into their realms with guarded glances. The betrayals hang overhead, a celestial indictment that weakens the oath's glow, hinting at the slumbering powers that must now awaken to counter the unraveling. But the question that remained was, how will the immortals reclaim the stars' favor when their own shadows cast such long doubts across the night? The meteor trails fade, leaving the sky poised, the first hums of ancient artifacts stirring from the earth's depths, ready to arm against the exposed treacheries. The meteor trails dissolve into the night's fabric, their fleeting lights surrendering to the deeper hush that blankets the cosmos. But the poised sky yields to a subterranean rumble, the first hums of ancient artifacts rising from the earth's core vibrating. Through stone and soil like the planet's own awakening breath, you feel it in your souls, first a low thrum that ascends from the underworld's veins, carrying you downward through the amphitheaters. Cracked floor into the labyrinthine caverns beneath Mesoamerica, where the air turns dense and warm, laced with the mineral temps of deep earth minerals and the faint sulphurous whisper of geothermal vents. Shadows cling to jagged walls veined with glowing quartz. And the psychological stirrings begin, that primal resonance of power long dormant, evoking mortals' innate awe when unearthing relics, hearts pounding with the fear that such forces might awaken something irrevocable within. The mythical artifacts stir from slumber now, each one humming with power drawn straight from the earth's molten heart, their essences pulsing in sync with the core's fiery rhythm. You navigate the cavern's twisting paths guided by the escalating vibrations until you reach a vast antechamber where the pantheon's legendary armaments repose on pedestals of obsidian and jade, their forms shrouded in dust and enchanted vines that wither at their stirring. Quetzalcoatl's wind lance materializes first, a spear of iridescent featherbone tipped with a crystal that captures gales, unfurling from its coil with a whoosh that scatters debris like autumn leaves. It draws power from ley lines beneath the Valley of Mexico, humming a melodic keen that promises tempests harnessed for the feathered serpent's defense. Huitzilopochtli's solar atletl follows, a throwing device wrought from sun-forged gold, its cords of hummingbird sinew tightening as it absorbs the core's heat, glowing with an inner radiance that casts dancing flames across the walls. Ready to hurl darts that ignite the air like falling stars, sensory details envelop you, the resonant hum growing to a symphony. Each artifact's tone distinct, the lance's high-pitched whistle like wind through red flutes, the atlotl's deep bass throb echoing like volcanic gurgles. The air thickens with ozone and heated stone, prickling your skin as geothermal steam rises in lazy curls. Carrying the earthy scent of petrichor, mixed with metallic overtones from awakening metals. Tlaloc's rain whip uncoils next, a lasso of living lightning-veined kelp, its barbs crackling with blue fire as it siphons aquifer energies from the core, lashing out experimentally to lash moisture from the cavern air, forming ephemeral shields of mist that shimmer and dissipate. Tezcatlipoca's shadow glaive emerges stealthily, a blade of purest obsidian that absorbs light to forge darkness, its edge humming a sinister purr drawn from the earth's shadowed depths, slicing the air to create voids that swallow echoes. Totex renewal. Scythe stirs with a softer groan, its curved blade of flexible jade pulsing with verdant light rejuvenating the vines around it as it pulls regenerative force from fertile mantle layers, promising to mend what the battle might rend. The epic cadence builds methodically, suspense threading through the awakening, as the artifacts respond to the celestial betrayals above their hums intensifying. With each star's accusatory shift as if the Earth's core senses the pantheon's peril and surges power upward to arm the deities against dissolution. Psychological intrigue weaves in, immortals and mortals alike, bound by the allure of such relics. Where possession tempts hubris, the power to reshape fate's stirring ambitions that could fracture even the most solemn oaths. Much like archaeologists unearthing tombs, drawn to the artifact's whispers that blur preservation with conquest. In mainstream historical fact, Aztec artisans in the 15th century workshops of Tenochtitlan crafted ceremonial weapons infused with ritual magic such as the Quetzalcoatl embedded with obsidian for Huitzilopochtli's festivals, a local legend from the Templo Mayor excavations recounting how such blades were believed to draw strength from the earth's Nawal spirits during eclipses, channeling core energies to empower warriors in divine favor. You circle the chamber, the hums sinking into a harmonious dirge that vibrates your bones. Each artifact awakening in sequence to the gods, distant calls Quetzalcoatl's lance quivering toward the surface, Huitzilopochtli's atlatl flaring to pierce the gloom, Coyote's illusion sling, a pouch of deceptive smoke weave, stirs last among the trickster's cache, its straps of phantom fur humming mischievously as it siphons volatile gases from the core, ready to hurl mirages that confound foes. The power drawn manifests visibly. Fissures in the cavern floor glow with liquid magma light, feeding the artifact's forms, their surfaces rippling as if breathing, the air now electric with the scent of ionized rock and blooming phosphor from quartz ignitions. Imagine you grasp one, the lance shaft cool, yet thrumming with wind, as promise, what divine arm would you wield? It for in the fray, balancing Earth's gift against the treacheries it might amplify. A quirky or bizarre detail pulses in the awakenings. Tezcatlipoca's shadowglaive, beyond its void-forging edge, harbors a hidden core of captured night specks of eternal darkness that, when hummed to life, project illusory twins of the wielder, multiplying deceptions in battle. A peculiar trait from temple lore where priests tested replicas in moonless rites, only to find the twins persisting post-ritual, haunting wielders with doppelganger whispers that sowed paranoia. Though the glaive's power waned if exposed to direct sunlight, forcing nocturnal ambushes, you sense it now, the glaive's hum birthing faint shadows that mimic your form briefly, dissolving with a chill laugh, heightening the intrigue as the artifacts prepare to ascend. Their powers laced with the Earth's unpredictable fury. Ancient mysteries of Aztec deities surface in the chamber's glow. The core as a living forge where weapons embody the world's cycle's creation, tools turn to destruction ends. Mirroring how mortals forge tools from Earth only to wield them in endless strife, stirrings crest artifacts levitating slightly from their pedestals, humming in unified chorus that shakes loose stalactites and crystalline chimes. The power surging toward the surface in waves that cause minor quakes in the mortal realm's priests in Tenochtitlan pausing their pleas to feel the Earth's arming, interpreting it as omens of equipped gods. Suspense coils as the lance spins lazily, the whiplashes arcs of light, each movement a prelude to the gathering where divine warriors will claim them, the hums carrying callbacks to the primordial forces, the codices, prophecies, and the stars. Indictments. Arming against the unraveling that now feels inescapably near. The chamber brightens with their collective aura. Shadows retreating as power consolidates, ready to infuse the pantheon's hands with Earth's unyielding might. But the question that remained was, will these earthborn weapons bind the gods in triumphant defense, or unleash the core's wild heart to devour the very order they seek to preserve? The hums crescendo into a roar that propels the artifacts upward, through cavern ceilings toward the assembling armies, where the air thickens with the storm of impending war. The roar of the artifacts propels them skyward, through rifts in the cavern ceilings, their hums fading into a pervasive drone that blankets the realms, drawing you upward in their wake as the Earth's core exhales a final resonant sigh. You emerge into the twilight expanse above the sacred valley, where the landscape blurs into a vast, ethereal plain suspended between mountains and stars, the boundaries of divine domains merging in anticipation. The air thickens immediately, heavy with the scent of impending war, a heady mix of charred flint from sharpening blades, the musky sweat of armored forms massing, and the sharp metallic bite of storm-laced winds whipping through feathered standards. It clings to you like a second skin, evoking the psychological prelude to conflict. That shared tension among warriors, where resolve hardens into inevitability, gods and mortals alike, feeling the pull of destiny's inexorable tide. Armies of divine warriors assemble here, coalescing from mists and light, their ranks stretching to the horizon like a living tapestry woven from myth. Huitzilopochtli's solar legions form the vanguard, ethereal eagles and hummingbirds, manifesting as armored phalanxes, their wings sheathed in golden plate that gleams with the Otlots ascending. Glow shields raised in synchronized blocks that reflect the fading sun like a wall of fire. Quetzalcoatl's wind riders flank them, serpentine cavalry coiling on gusts. Feathers ruffled by the lance's keening as it slots into grasping talons, ready to unleash cyclones that part the ranks of foes. Talakes aquatic host surges from summoned lagoons, Talakes spirits in shell armor wading through knee-deep mists. The rain whip cracking overhead to marshal their advance, waters churning beneath their feet in obedient swells. Tezcatlipoca's shadow brigade slinks from the edges, jaguar shades prowling invisibly until the glaive's hum signals their prow, mirrors multiplying their numbers into an illusory horde that confounds the eye. Zyptotech's renewal vanguard follows, golden-skinned renewers bearing the scythe's verdant pulse, their forms shedding and regrowing armor in rhythmic cycles to inspire the lines behind, while Coyote's trickster scouts dart through the fringes, slings humming with deceptive pouches that scatter mirages to test the assembly's cohesion. The plain vibrates with their mustering. Sensory details assaulting you, the thunderous stomp of feet sinking into a march that shakes the ethereal ground, sending ripples through the air like drum beats echoing from Tenochtitlan's war temples, the cacophony of calls, eagle shrieks blending with jaguar growls, wind howls merging with water, roars building an epic symphony that drowns out the distant mortal pleas, now faint undercurrents in the war scent. And the visual chaos of banners unfurling, emblazoned with codex glyphs that glow with prophecy's light. Constellations' betrayals mirrored in their folds. Psychological intrigue simmers in the ranks, divine warriors extensions of their gods whilst grappling with the oaths. Fragility whispers of stellar exposures stirring doubts that manifest as hesitant formations, much like human armies before battle where camaraderie masks the inner calculus of survival versus loyalty. You move among them, the air's thickness pressing in, observing how the gathering storm mirrors the pantheon's tensions. Alliance is holding in the mass, but fraying at the edges where shadows linger longer. In mainstream historical fact, Aztec military tradition in the 15th century revered elite units like the Quetzalcoatl, eagle warriors and ocelotl jaguar warriors trained in the Commacac schools to emulate divine protectors, participating in flower wars that captured foes for rituals. A local legend from the campaigns against Tlaxcala, recounting how such assemblies invoked Huitzilopochtli's presence through feathered regalia, believing the gods marched invisibly with the ranks to ensure cosmic balance in earthly strife. Here those traditions ascend to divine scale, the solar legions drilling with otlitl throws that arc harmless light spears, windriders practicing dives that carve furrows in the mist, the aquatic host forming barriers of swirling eddies that deflect mock assaults. The artifacts distribute seamlessly, the lance embedding in Quetzalcoatl's vanguard with a resonant click, the glaive vanishing into Tezcatlipoca's shadows only to re-emerge in multiplied hands, their core-drawn power, infusing the armies with an unyielding vigor. The hums evolving into war chants that rally the ethereal hosts against the prophecy's unraveling. Suspense builds methodically as the assembly coalesces, the plain's horizon darkening with the gathering clouds that Tlaloc's forces summon, not for warning but for cover. The scent intensifying with the brine of evaporated lakes and the char of flint struck in preparation. Zip. Totech's renewers circulate their scythes, tracing arcs that heal minor rifts in the ranks, shadows encroaching too far dispersed by verdant pulses, yet the psychological undercurrents persist. Warriors, exchanging glances that recall the stars' indictments, oaths, tested in the pre-battle hush where ambitions flicker like dying embers. Coyote's scouts weave through, their slings popping minor illusions to ease tensions of false dawn, to bolster the solar lines. A phantom oasis for the aquatic host, but even their tricks carry the war's weight. The air now so thick you can taste it, a prelude laced with the subtle fear that the storm might consume its summoners. A quirky or bizarre detail manifests amid the mustering, Huitzilopochtli's solar banner. Not a mere standard, but an artifact fused with a fragment of the sun's corona. Flutters to release periodic bursts of warmth that invigorate the ranks. Yet in high tension, it inverts to project chilling mirages of eternal night. A peculiar trait from ritual lore where temple replicas caused warriors to hallucinate victories or defeats during vigils. The banner's dual nature once leading a drill to dissolve into panic when night visions overwhelmed the heat, leaving soldiers shivering under midday sun. You see it now, the banner warming the vanguard before flickering a brief shadow veil that passes, eliciting growls of resolve, heightening the epic cadence as the armies align fully, fronts curving like a serpent ready to strike. Ancient mysteries of Aztec deities unfold in the assembly, the divine hosts as extensions of the worlds. Order warriors embodying the cycles of creation through conflict. Much like mortals who muster not just for conquest, but to appease the gods' demands, their fates entwined in the gathering momentum. The storm fully gathers, as the final ranks lock, the plain now a sea of movement, artifacts hums, syncing with the chants. The air is sent peaking in a heady crescendo that promises release only in clash. Distant rumbles from the underworld hint at the skirmishes to come, the armies poised, breaths held in collective anticipation, the prophecy's shadow lengthening over the massed might. But the question that remained was, can this assembled fury hold the line against the celestial fractures? Or will the storm's own tempests scatter the warriors before the first shadows fall? The banners snap taut in the rising gale, the hosts advancing toward the underworld's fringes, where initial clashes ignite the divine fray. The banners snap taut in the gathering gale, propelling the divine hosts forward across the ethereal plain until the landscape dips abruptly, the ground fracturing into a yawning chasm that swallows light and leads to the underworld's shadowed Mashabalba's fringes, where the veil between life and death thins to a whisper, the air turning clammy and thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying blooms. You plunge with them into this descent, the transition seamless as mist coils around your form, muffling the war chants to hollow echoes while the chill seeps into your bones, evoking that psychological edge where the known gives way to the abyss. Gods and their ethereal warriors alike, feeling the pull of the unknown testing their oath's metal. The underworld unfolds in layers of cavernous twilight, rivers of black water, carving obsidian banks, and bioluminescent fungi, casting eerie blue glows that dance like lost souls. The atmosphere humming with the artifact's subdued pulses as the first skirmishes erupt, small flares of conflict that ignite the greater blaze. Skirmishes ignite in pockets of shadow here, testing the resolve of gods and their hosts as vanguard scouts clash with the underworld's native guardian spectral entities. Born of the previous sun's remnants, twisted forms of jaguars with starry pelts and serpents trailing comet tails, roused by the prophecy's stirrings to defend their realm against the intruders. You witness the first eruption near a jagged outcrop, where Quetzalcoatl's wind riders dive their lances humming as they unleash gusts that scatter. A pack of starry jaguars, the beast's roars reverberating like thunder in hollow caves, claws raking ethereal trails that spark against feathered armor. Huitzilopochtli's eagle phalanx follows, solar outlots flinging light darts that pierce the gloom, illuminating snarling faces. Enforcing retreats, yet the jaguars reform from dissipating shadows, their starry pelts reforming like constellations realigning, challenging the warrior's poise with relentless resurgence. The air vibrates with the clash, the sharp crack of wind against claw, the sizzle of light meeting dark, and the underlying scent of scorched myth. Like burning amite paper from ancient codices, unspooling in the fray. Deeper in the fringes, Tlaloc engage a riverine serpent host. The rain whips lashing to summon localized downpours that churn the black waters into whirlpools. Drowning the serpent's advances, while the ethereal host wades forward, shells rattling in rhythmic defiance. The serpents counter with venomous coils that spray acidic mists, etching faint burns on the armor. But not breaking stride, the skirmish a test of endurance where each wave tests the aquatic resolve, mists rising in veils that obscure and reveal in equal measure. Psychological intrigue simmers in these outbursts. The warrior's projections of divine will, confronting not just foes but the underworld's erosive doubt. Whispers from the depths probing weaknesses seeded by celestial betrayals. Much like mortals delving into caverns for treasures, their courage fraying as the dark amplifies inner fears of the void's embrace. Tezcatlipoca's Shadow Brigade exploits the chaos, glaives slicing voids that swallow serpent tails, their illusory multiples confusing the guardians into striking phantoms. Yet the effort strains the oaths, a jaguar shade glancing back with a mirror glint of suspicion toward allied lines. The epic cadence swells methodically through the skirmishes, suspense building as each clash probes the assembly's integrity. Siptotex renewers mending a windrider's torn wing with scythe pulses, verdant light weaving fibers anew, while coyote scouts sling deceptive smokes that lure jaguars into ambushes, their mirages collapsing foes into self-made traps. Sensory details heighten the immersion, the damp chill clinging heavier with each step, water droplets beating on your skin like cold sweat. The bioluminescent glows flickering erratically under assault, casting faces in blue-tinged resolve and fleeting terror. And the cacophony evolving from isolated roars to a layered din, winds howling counterpoints to water splashes. Light hisses mingling with shadow purrs, the underworld's response a groaning earth that answers each blow. The tests resolve in waves, hosts pushing forward, but marked feathers singed. While shells cracked, the artifacts hums, steadying faltering grips, drawing deeper from the core to bolster waning vigor. Yet the Guardian's resilience hints at greater forces stirring below. The fringes mere sentinels for the prophecy's deeper threats. In mainstream historical lore from the 16th century accounts of Aztec cosmology and Sahagin's writings, the underworld Mictlan consisted of 9 layers navigated by souls over 4 years, guarded by entities like the scaly Xolotl who tested the dead's metal with trials of darkness and cold. A local legend from the Mixtec codices depicting how heroes like Tapultz and Quetzalcoatl ventured there to retrieve bones, emerging. Scarred but enlightened, their trials mirroring the divine skirmishes as rites of passage to affirm cosmic roles. Here those trials ascend the ethereal hosts, navigating similar gauntlets-wind riders, dodging illusory pits that yawn like Soultrap's eagle. Phalanxes enduring chill winds that sap warmth testing, not just physical form but the psychological fortitude forged in the amphitheater soothes the gods observing from afar, as their warriors embody the stakes' subtle observations on how even immortals' extensions waver when the abyss stares back resilience born from collective resolve amid individual dread. A quirky or bizarre detail flares in the fray. Quetzalcoatl's winged lance, beyond its gale tip, harbors a core of captured comet breath that, during clashes, exhales prophetic gusts, carrying fragmented visions, brief glimpses of battle, outcomes whispered to the wielder. A peculiar artifact from feathered serpent temples where replicas and rituals granted seers winds that foretold rains or ruins. Though the visions often inverted if doubt crept in, turning guidance to misleading zephyrs that once led a procession astray into floods. You hear it now, a rider mid-dive receiving a gust that murmurs of unity holds, but shadows deepen. The lance quivering as it repels a starry jaguar, the vision spurring a fierce counter, but planting a seed of unease that ripples through the squadron. Skirmishes intensify, renewer scythes harvesting fallen energies to redistribute. Trickster slings popping clusters of deceptive fireflies that blind guardian eyes. The hosts advancing yard by contested yard. The underworld's fringes yielding, but not without toll. Ethereal forms flickering at the edges like candle flames in draft. Imagine you were in the vanguard, lance in hand or whip cracking. What resolve would the abyss test in your essence as the guardians press back? Ancient mysteries of Aztec pantheon reveal in these ignitions. The underworld as the forge of true allegiance, where skirmishes echo the gods' internal battles. Mortal souls' journeys paralleling the divine pushed, tests that strip illusions. Revealing cores of unyielding light or creeping void. Suspense coils tighter as a larger rumble builds from the depths, the initial clashes culminating in a momentary standoff. Hosts regrouping amid the blue glows, breaths heaving in the clammy air, the scent now laced with the faint char of expended power. Guardians retreating to summon reinforcements, leaving the fringes scarred and smoldering. The advance halts at a cavernous ledge overlooking deeper chasms. The warriors resolve, tempered but unbowed, artifacts humming louder in anticipation of the sacrificial surges that will fuel the next ascent. Yet the Guardians' parting howls carry a mocking note. hinting at the blood offerings rising from mortal altars to empower the fray. Boundaries straining as the war's tide turns inexorable. But the question that remained was, how will these tested hosts withstand the underworld's deeper trials when the guardians' retreat masks a greater hunger for the divine essences encroaching below? The blue glows pulse ominously, the ledge trembling as distant echoes of surging offerings rise. Tides of power that strain the realms seems in preparation for the champion's summons. The ledge trembles beneath the divine host's regrouped ranks. The ominous pulse of blue glows from the chasm below, syncing with a rising cadence from the world above a distant rhythmic chant that seeps through the veils like blood through parched soil, carrying the fervor of mortal altars where priests amplify their pleas into acts of profound offering. You feel the shift in the underworld's air, the clammy chill yielding to a warmer undercurrent, fused with the coppery temps of spilled life essence and the acrid smoke of ignited hearts. As if the realm's boundaries began to thin under the weight of human devotion turned desperate. The psychological resonance hits like a wave, mortals bridging the divine strife with their own sacrifices, their resolve a mirror to the gods' tested oaths, fueling might at the cost of fraying the cosmic weave that separates life from shadow. Blood offerings surge now, a tidal swell of power channeled from the earthly temples, where Aztec priests escalate their rituals to empower the ethereal fray. The essences rising in crimson streams that pierce the underworld's fringes like veins pulsing with the world's heartbeat. You sense it ascending from Tenochtitlan's precincts, first the Great Pyramid's apex channeling, the Surja priest atop the Copetidal, his obsidian knife flashing under torchlight, carving symbolic incisions that release symbolic blood, mingling with jade beads and copel, to form an ascending mist that coalesces into ethereal fuel. The offerings multiply across the empire. In Tlaxcala's highlands, seers offer pricked palms over fire pits, their drops hissing to steam that carries prayers. Along Lake Texcoco's shores, causeway communities enact communal rites, young warriors volunteering symbolic piercings, the collective life force knitting into a vast luminous tide that floods the divine realms. This surge invigorates the hosts below, wind riders' lances gleaming brighter, solar phalanxes' shields radiating renewed warmth, shadow brigades' glaives cutting deeper voids as the power infuses their forms, mending skirmish wounds with vitality drawn from human bonds. Sensory details envelop the rising, the faint wet slap of offerings hitting altars echoing through the chasms like rain on stone. The thickening air now laced with the metallic bloom of blood and the herbal bite of ritual herbs crushed in mortar. Vapors wafting down to mingle with the underworld's decay. And the visual tide itself, crimson auras swirling upward in spirals that illuminate the ledge, casting the warriors' faces in ruddy glows of determination and subtle strain. The gods' might swells with each pulse. Quetzalcoatl's winds gaining ferrous edge that scatters lingering guardians. Huitzilopochtli's flames roaring higher to dispel the blue fungi's. Yet the boundaries strain palpably, the veil rippling like taut fabric, allowing glimpses of mortal figures superimposed over the ethereal priest's chants, bleeding into Warcry's realms overlapping in hazardous intimacy. Psychological intrigue builds, the offerings not mere fuel but a double-edged conduit where human desperation probes divine resolve. Gods feeling the mortals' unspoken bargains empower us, or doom us, all mirroring the pantheon's own precarious pacts. Where might gained risks the erosion of separation, immortals pondering the cost of reliance on fragile worshippers. In mainstream historical fact, the Aztec practice of human sacrifice, meticulously recorded in the Codex Florentino of the 1570s, peaked during major festivals like Quetzalcoatl, where captives' hearts were offered atop the Templo Mayor to nourish the gods. Particularly Huitzilopochtli and Tolac, sharing the sun's journey and rain's bountia, local legend from the empire's expansion era in the 1420s under its Quetzalcoatl, recounting how such tides of offering quelled a prophesied famine by feeding the deities during a solar eclipse, their power surging to restore cosmic balance, though overuse strained the social fabric, leading to captive wars that bled the land dry. Here the surge echoes that scale but ascends ethereally. Priests adapting ancient forms to the strife, lethal now, symbolic yet potent, their blood mingling in vats of pulque that bubble with inner light. vapors questing to the fray like homing spirits. The tide's flow quickens, boundaries warping further. A warrior on the ledge glimpses his mortal counterpart mid-offering, their shared pulse sinking in a disorienting harmony. Shadow multiples flicker with human faces briefly, glaives humming with borrowed fervor that blurs allegiance. The epic cadence swells methodically, suspense threading through the rising as the offerings peak, the crimson streams branching to touch each host renewer's scythes blooming with vital green. Trickster slings filling with illusory blood drops that burst into confounding mists, fueling advances into deeper chasms where guardians recoil from the empowered onslaught. Yet the strain manifests in fissures along the veil cracks, where underworld chills seep upward too. Mortal altars causing priests to shiver mid-chant, or divine echoes reaching the surface as unnatural quakes that topple incense. Burners' offerings spilling wastefully and amplifying the urgency. You move with the tide, feeling its warmth course through the air, the scent intensifying to a heady perfume that masks the decay below, observing how God's might, thus bolstered, teeters on the edge of dependency. Their immortality intertwined with human sacrifice in a cycle that risks mutual unraveling. Much like mortals who give all for their patrons only to find the dead eternal, quirky or bizarre detail surges with the tide. Talaka's rain whip, attuned to the offerings, doesn't just absorb the blood mist, but transmutes it into echo drops. Condensed essences that replay the donor's final pleas as watery whispers during lashes, granting the wielder fleeting insights into mortal psyches. A peculiar trait from grotto lore, where temple versions and rituals allowed shamans to hear ancestors' voices in the rain. Though the echoes often lingered post-rite, haunting users with unsolicited confessions that sowed doubt or madness. The whip's barbs dripping with these spectral droplets that evaporate into vaporous advice mid-battle. You hear them now, a Tlaloc's lash cracking to release a faint sustain the reins. Or we drown. The voice of a highland priest, spurring a fierce whirlpool that engulfs a serpent guardian. Yet the whisper lingers, straining the aquatic host's focus, as personal pleas bleed into commands. The boundaries groan under the load realms, straining like overfilled vessels, the surge peaking in a luminous crest that bathes the ledge in red gold. Light hosts surging forward, renewed but precarious, the tide's power a lifeline that tugs perilously at the seams. Imagine you are the conduit for this rise, the blood's warmth in your veins. What boundary would you guard as the offerings flood the divine with mortal heart? Ancient mysteries of Aztec lore illuminate the tides. Sacrifices as the glue of cosmos, where blood life's quintessence fuels gods but erodes the divide. Echoing tales of creation where the fifth sun rose from divine and human mingled essences. A reminder that might without balance devours all. The offerings crest and hold, the empowered hosts descending further. Chants harmonizing across realms, yet the strain widens cracks where forbidden energies seep back, hinting at the reluctant calls that will summon mortal champions to mend the fraying weave. But the question that remained was, will these sacrificial tides bind the realms in shared triumph, or overwhelm the boundaries until human and divine bleed indistinguishably into chaos? The crimson glow fades to embers along the chasm walls, the surge ebbing as the hosts press on. The air now humming with the weight of empowered steps leading toward the mending of heroes whose fates entwine deeper still. The air hums with the weight of empowered steps as the divine hosts delve deeper into the underworld's winding chasms. The ebb of sacrificial tides, leaving a lingering warmth that clings to the shadows. But a new resonance stirs from the surface realm's a tentative pull, like threads of fate uncoiling to bridge the abyssal divide. You feel it tugging at the fringes of the ethereal ranks, a mortal echo rising through the cracked veils, drawing you upward, alongside the host's advance until the boundaries reassert themselves in a hazy shimmer, depositing you amid the misty highlands beyond Tenochtitlan's lake, where nocturnal winds carry the faint clamor of temple bells and the distant murmur of gathering crowds. The night sky above whelms with the codex's prophetic glow, stars still bearing the scars of betrayal, and the psychological undercurrent shifts to one of human scale. That reluctant summons where ordinary lives brush against the infinite, evoking the dread of being plucked from the familiar into the gods' vast, unforgiving drama. Mortal champions are summoned now, their fates intertwining with the escalating divine war, as the pantheon's need pierces the veil selecting. Souls whose essences resonate with the oaths and omens warriors, seers, and visionaries from across the Aztec domains, called not by fanfare but by insistent dreams and omens that brook no refusal. You stand in a secluded grove near the Chinampa fields, the ground soft with fertile mud that squelches underfoot. As the first summoning manifests, a young eagle warrior named Xochitl, his lithe form clad in cotton armor, feathered with captured Quetzal plumes, awakens from a trance induced by pulque laced with sacred herbs, his eyes widening to the vision that grips Huitzilopochtli's solar form extending a hand, the Otlot's glow beckoning him to the fray. The air around him thickens with ethereal mist, carrying the underworld's chill that raises goose flesh on his arms, and he rises unsteadily, his heart pounding with the psychological conflict of the call, loyalty to kin and fields clashing against the divine imperative. Much like a soldier torn between hearth and horn, the weight of destiny pressing like an unseen yoke, the summons spreads like ripples in the lake. Other champions rousing in their disparate lives, rain priestess from Tlaloc's mountain shrines, her goggle mask trembling as visions of the rain whip coil around her dreams, urging her to channel tempests for the hosts, a trickster shaman from the northern deserts. Coyote's sly grin mirroring in his fevered sleep as the illusion-slaying whispers of deceptions to turn in the war-s tide. Gadada. And a renewer artisan from Zyptotec's verdant valleys, his hands calloused from weaving, now itching with the scythe's verdant pulse that promises mending for the gods' strained alliances. Sensory details immerse the calls. The grove is nocturnal chorus of crickets falling silent under the mist's weight, the tangy scent of wet earth mingling with the herbal residue on Xochitl's breath. Distant temple drums syncing with his pulse, a rhythmic throb that echoes the underworld's hums, pulling him toward a hidden sonati where the veil thins further, allowing glimpses of the divine advance-wind riders wheeling, shadows prowling. The reluctant nature etches in their faces, Xochitl hesitating at the senate's edge, fingers tracing his feathered talisman, the psychological intrigue deepening as the call probes personal fears, abandonment of loved ones. The hubris of standing among immortals, observations on how mortals, ever the pantheon's fragile linchpin, embody the war's human cost. There summons a reminder that God's battles bleed into everyday souls. In mainstream historical fact, Aztec society revered the Teotic's divine messengers and champions selected through omens. During the empire's zenith and the 1480s temple dedication, where captives and volunteers alike were elevated to embody gods in rituals, their fates intertwined with cosmic events like the new fire ceremony every 52 years. A local legend from the Codex Telleriano romances recounting how such summoned heroes, like the fabled Tapald-Sin in Toltec lore, ventured to divine realms and visions, returning with boons or burdens that shaped empires, their reluctance often framed as the noble struggle against fate's inexorable draw. Here the calls adapt to the strife, no altars needed but dreams laced with artifacts. Essences Quetzalcoatl, wind-carrying feather whispers to a seer in the highlands. Tezcatlipoca, shadow glazing a mirror and a jaguar warrior-s hut to reflect the Glaves Caliche champion rising with a mix of awe and trepidation. Gathering rudimentary arms, obsidian-tipped spears, jade amulets pulsing with borrowed power, their steps leading to convergence points where cenotes and sacred caves serve as portals. The epic cadence builds methodically as the champions converge, dispense coiling in their reluctant march, the priestess navigating fog-shrouded paths, her robes whispering with future rain. The shaman, evading village watchmen, his sling pouch humming deceptions to mask his path. Xochitl leaping causeways under starlight, the lake's black waters reflecting fractured omens that spur him onward. The air vibrates with the divine war's escalation, boundaries straining anew from the offering's afterglow, allowing the champion's presences to echo back to the host's warriors on the ledge, sensing mortal kinships. A solar phalanx's shield flickering with Xochitl's face superimposed, bolstering resolve but underscoring the intertwining fates where a champion's fall could dim a god's light. Ecological tensions mount the called grappling with the call-less intimacy. Visions not of glory but of the skirmish's horrors, guardians' starry forms devouring allies, the gods' betrayals manifesting as internal voices urging flight, yet the pull deepens, artifacts hums, syncing with their heartbeats, weaving their threads into the war's loom. A quirky or bizarre detail attends one summoning, the renewer artisan's jade amulet. A heirloom from Zyptotex writes, does merely glow but sprouts ephemeral vines during the call that trace the champion's veins like living tattoos, granting visions of mending wounds, but also replaying the wearer's past sacrifices in vivid flashes. A peculiar artifact from artisan guilds where such amulets and ceremonies allowed communal memory sharing. Though the vines sometimes refused to wither, leaving permanent marks that itched with unresolved regrets, once driving a weaver to abandon his craft for the wilds. You see it on the artisan now, vines creeping up his arm as he approaches. A cave mouth flashing images of lost apprentices that steel his resolve, the bizarre sensation. Adding layers to his reluctance, the tattoos pulsing in time with the side's distant hum. Sensory immersion heightens in the convergences, the senate's water lapping colder. Infused with underworld brine, the winds gusting with feathered scents from divine realms. And the collective unease in the champion's breaths, mingling with the night's jasmine bloom. As they step through portals, emerging amid the hosts as spectral allies, their mortal forms etherealized, weapons transmuting to echo the artifact Xochitl's spear lengthening to a solar dart, the priestess's staff whipping mists. Imagine you are among the summoned, the vine or wind gripping your essence. What reluctance would the divine war unearth in your soul before you step through? Ancient mysteries of Aztec pantheons surface in these calls. Mortals as the bridge in the five suns cycle, their champions embodying the human spark that ignites or quenches divine flames. A testament to how the gods' escalations demand mortal anchors. Fates entwined in a dance where reluctance forges true heroism. The champions integrate, hosts swelling with their presences, the air now thrumming with hybrid vigor-regal wings shadowing human strides. Shadows cloaking shaman grins, the war's pace quickening as the ledge gives way to a vast cavern arena. The blue glows yielding to a blood moon's eclipse light filtering from above. The core confrontation poised beyond mortal sight, yet the called now pierce that veil. Their intertwining fates the spark to ignite it. But the question that remained was, can these reluctant mortals anchor the gods' fury without being consumed by the eclipse's devouring gaze? The cavern arena looms, the blood moon cresting. The hosts and champions arraying under its crimson veil, the realms beyond sight beginning to unfold in shadowed splendor. The cavern arena sprawls into shadowed splendor beneath the cresting blood moon. Its crimson veil filtering through ethereal fissures overhead like the gaze of an ancient sentinel. Bathing the assembled hosts and champions in a ruddy haze that deepens the underworld, blues to bruised indigos. You stand at the arena's precipice, the ground a vast, undulating expanse of obsidian tiles, etched with forgotten glyphs now humming underfoot as the core confrontation unfolds. Realms beyond mortal sight, converging in a tapestry of layered existences, the underworld's depths intertwining with celestial heights, and the mortal world's echoes boundaries so thin that breaths from all planes mingle in the thickening air. The eclipse's devouring gaze hangs heavy, the moon's disk half obscured by umbral shadow casting elongated silhouettes that twist and merge across the arena, evoking that psychological precipice where anticipation crests into inexorability. Gods and their mortal anchors alike, sensing the phrase pivot, the war's momentum, coiling like a serpent, ready to strike at the heart of the divine order. Under the blood moon, the confrontation ignites in phased waves. The divine hosts surging forward in synchronized advances that test the prophecy's unraveling. Quetzalcoatl's wind riders leading the charge with lances keening through the crimson light, carving paths of cyclonic force that buffet Tezcatlipoca's shadow brigade into flickering retreats. Huitzilopochtli's solar phalanx anchors the center. Otlaut's hurling arcs of contained fire that illuminate the arena's fringes, revealing Zyptotex renewers weaving verdant barriers to shield the flanks. Their scythes pulsing in rhythmic harmony with the eclipse's slow creep. The Lalek's aquatic host flows like a living river, whips cracking mists that coalesced into defensive veils, countering Coyote's deceptive slings that scatter mirage clusters, illusory duplicates of the hosts designed to sow confusion, popping like embers under the moon's gaze. The mortal champions weave through the ethereal ranks. Xochitl's solar dart spear extended by the god's essence, thrusting to disperse shadow multiples, while the rain priestess channels whipcoes, to summon localized eddies that swallow trickster phantoms, their human presences, grounding the divine might yet the Eclipse's light etches their forms with a haunting transience, as if the beyond-sight realms threaten to absorb them wholly. Sensory details assault the unfolding, the arena's tiles vibrating with each clash. A low thunder that resonates in your chest like the world's own pulse. The air electric with ozone from wind and mist collisions laced with the faint metallic bloom of empowered blood offerings still lingering from the surge, now amplified under the moon's ruddy filter. And the auditory symphony swelling, the keening lances harmonizing with whip cracks, solar hisses blending with shadow purrs. All underscored by the eclipse's subtle hush, a cosmic sigh that muffles distant mortal chants from above, turning them to ethereal harmonies that buoy the fray. Psychological intrigue intensifies amid the core, gods directing from the vanguard while their essences probe the champions. Resolves Quetzalcoatl's winds, whispering encouragements laced with the feathered serpent-est dream visions. Tezcatlipoca's glaives casting doubt mirrors that reflect the warrior's fears back at them, observing how immortals, through their mortal extensions, confront the war's intimacy. The eclipse exposing vulnerabilities where divine hubris meets human fragility. Alliances straining under the moon, as impartial scrutiny as betrayals from the stars manifest in hesitant strikes or lingering shadows. The confrontation phases deepen, the blood moon's eclipse reaching totality in a moment of profound dimness. The arena plunging into near black where only artifact glows persist renewers. Verdant pulses weaving luminous threads that mend a breached mist veil. Trickster slings erupting in false dawns that briefly blind advancing shadows. The hosts pressing against a coalescing guardian horde from the depths. Ethereal behemoths of compacted myth. Colossal serpents with scales of fallen stars. Jaguar colossi roaring stellar challenges. Huitzilopochtli's phalanx meets them head-on, darts igniting the gloom to force recoils. While the priestess champion summons a tidal swell that engulfs a serpent's flank, her form flickering as the eclipse's gaze tugs at her anchor. The realms beyond sight unfolding further glimpses of celestial betrayals replaying in the shadows, Tezcatlipoca's mirror multiplying into a labyrinth that ensnares windriders, forcing Quetzalcoatl's lances to carve escape cyclones. The mortal integrations shine and strain. Xochitl's dart piercing a jaguar's starry pelt, his human cry echoing through the phalanx to rally. Faltering eagles, yet the eclipse devours fragments of his silhouette, a reminder of the anchors. Peril their reluctance from the summons now a live wire in the divine circuit. In mainstream historical lore from the Aztec solar worship documented in the 16th century Codex Mendoza eclipses were omens of cosmic peril, interpreted as the sun or moon under siege by darkness, prompting frantic new fire ceremonies, where priests ignited flames atop pyramids to repel the devouring forces, a local legend from the reign of Moctezuma I, in the 1440s, recounting how such events summoned warriors to ritual dances, believing their movements could restore light and avert the fifth sun's end. Their blood moon vigils blending fear with fervent unity to mirror the gods' own battles against oblivion. Here, the eclipse's totality embodies that siege on divine scale. The confrontation's core pulsing with similar rituals, the host advances as dances of light against shadow. Champion strikes, igniting ethereal fires that push back the totality's edge, the moon's disk, nibbled by encroaching umbra, yet the beyond-sight realms reveal layered threats. Primordial energies from Zyptotec, Esrite manifesting as coiling voids that sap artifact hums coyotes' deceptions, evolving into arena-wide mirages that swap ally and foe mid-clash, forcing renewers to scythe through illusions to reaffirm bonds. The epic cadence surges methodically, suspense cresting as the totality breaks, the blood moon srim flaring anew in a corona of crimson that bathes the fray in renewed vigor, the hosts reclaiming ground, but at cost, mist thinning from overextended whips, shadows lingering like bruises on the tiles. Psychological observations linger in the respite, gods sensing the eclipse's toll on their mortal threads. Tezcatlipoca's brigade probing for weaknesses in the phalanx's solar core. Quetzalcoatl's winds carrying callbacks to the council's oaths and the codex's prophecies. The champion's presences a stabilizing hum that tempers divine overreach. Yet the war's intimacy breeds introspection immortals, pondering if the beyond-sight veils hide greater unravelings, where victory might hollow the victors. Sensory immersion peaks in the flare. the corona's warmth cutting the chill, casting ruby highlights on feathers and scales. The air shimmering with residual static from dispersed mirages, sense of scorched myth mingling with the eclipse's faint cosmic chill like frost on copper, the din modulating to a charged hush breaths collective in the arena of the guardians. Roars receding as the hosts consolidate artifacts thrumming with the moon's restored light. A quirky or bizarre detail gleams in the phrase heart, Huitzilopochtli's solar otlatlot. Under eclipse light doesn't merely hurl darts but refracts the blood moon S-rays into corona shards, prismatic fragments that embed in foes, replaying solar conquests as disorienting visions until expelled. A peculiar artifact from Sun Temple lore, where replicas and ceremonies granted warriors glimpses of past glories, though the shards sometimes lingered in allies by mishap implanting ambitions that fractured ranks, the Otlot's chords vibrating with these trapped histories during totality, once causing a ritual guard to charge shadows in hallucinatory zeal. You witness a phalanx dart embedding in a starry serpent, the beast recoiling as visions of sunbirths flicker across its scales. The Otlittle humming louder in Xochitl's borrowed grasp, the champion, shaking off a fleeting shard that whispers of his own unspoken glories, adding bizarre layers to the resolve. The confrontation holds in poised equilibrium, the arena's glyphs igniting in response to the flare, illuminating paths forward into the realm's hidden folds. The war's core burning brighter, yet shadowed by the eclipse's lingering threat. But the question that remained was, will the blood moon's restored light forge unbreakable fronts for the hosts, or illuminate the fractures that betrayals have sown in the heart of the fray? The corona expands, the arena's tiles warming underfoot, the guardians regrouping in the depths as shattered alliances loom on the horizon. The eclipse's gaze shifting to the chaos that will soon erupt from within. The corona's expansion bathes the arena's tiles in deepening warmth, the obsidian surfaces glowing faintly, as if absorbing the blood moon's renewed vigor, yet the regrouping guardians in the depths serve only as a distant rumble, a prelude overshadowed by the subtle fractures spider-webbing through the divine hosts themselves. You feel it first in the air shift, a sudden chill threading through the ruddy haze like a draft from an uninvited shadow. As the eclipse's gaze lingers on the edges of the phalanxes, illuminating not unity, but the fissures sown by celestial indictments and whispered deceptions, the psychological undercurrents surge, that inevitable unraveling where trust, once forged in amphitheater oaths, erodes under the weight of exposed ambitions, gods and their anchors sensing the betrayal's culmination. The war's chaos turning inward like a serpent devouring its tail. Immortals confronting the mirror of their own divisions amid the mortal champion's grounding presences. Betrayals culminate now in the arena's heart. Chaos erupting as once united gods turn blades upon each other. The hosts fracturing along lines of suspicion that the codex's prophecies and Tezcatlipoca's mirrors have etched deep. It begins subtly. A shadow brigade's glaive veering not toward the guardians but slicing through a mist veil of Talaka's aquatic flank. The blade's void swallowing a Tlaloc's form in a ripple of surprised Tezcatlipoca's command. His mirror reflecting the rain deity's earlier reservations as justification. The air crackling with the acrid temps of betrayed mist evaporating into nothingness. Huitzilopochtli's solar phalanx hesitates in the center, the war goddess Otlot, humming discordantly as whispers from Coyote-s slings plant visions of Quetzalcoatl-s winds as subtle saboteurs. A dart arcing wide to graze a windrider's feathers, igniting a skirmish within the vanguard where eagles clash with serpents, their calls twisting from harmony to accusation. The chaos spreads like wildfire in dry brush renewers. Scythes, pausing mid-men to parry unexpected strikes from allied shadows, zip, Totec. Verdant pulses flickering as the flayed lord senses the ritual. Forbidden energies twisted against him, his golden form dimming under the onslaught of internal doubt. Sensory details envelop the shattering, the arena's once synchronized stomp, fracturing into discordant clashes. The metallic ring of glaive on Otlot, echoing like shattered pottery. The air thickening further with the ozone of conflicted powers. Scents of scorched feathers mingling with evaporating mists, and the faint earthen bitterness of renewal, halted mid-bloom. And the visual unraveling under the corona's light phalanxes splintering into eddies of motion, mortal champions like Xochitl, dodging both guardian roars and treacherous darts from former kin. his solar spear now a beacon in the turmoil, reflecting the eclipse's crimson in arcs of desperate defense. Psychological intrigue peaks in the bedlam. Gods wielding not just artifacts, but the psyches of their hosts, Tezcatlipoca's shadows amplifying paranoia. Mirrors projecting personalized indictments that erode the oath's bonds. Quetzalcoatl's winds carrying frantic pleas for recall amid the fraps. Their immortals, their egos the war's true battleground. Mere mortals in the champion's ranks, where human reluctance amplifies divine hubris. Alliances breaking not in grand gestures, but in the quiet betrayal of a hesitated strike. The chaos a commentary on the fragility of unity when powers allure, whispers louder than prophecy. The culmination cascades across the arena. Tlalox's rain whips lashing out at encroaching shadows in retaliation. Eddies forming to drown deceptive mirages but ensnaring wind allies in the cross-currents. The rain deities' goggle eyes flashing stormlight that blinds a renewer contingent. His earlier warnings twisted into preemptive fury against perceived hoarders of renewal. Coyote scouts revel in the disarray, slings popping clusters of illusions that swap loyalties mid-charge. Aqua. A solar eagle striking a fellow phalanx member, a trickster. Grin echoing in the pop as the mirage dissolves, yet even the trickster's web tangles his illusions reflecting back. Tezcatlipoca's own deceptions forcing a momentary alliance fracture, where shadows turn on their own multiples. The mortal anchors falter under the strain, the priestess championess mists wavering as she discerns the whip-s echoes, carrying not warnings but accusations from her own kin. Xochitl's dart quivering in his grip as celestial betrayals replay in his mind. The shaman's sling bursting a mirage that reveals his call's reluctance as a vulnerability. Champions' forms flickering brighter yet more translucent, their human essences straining to hold the divine tide from total dissolution. In mainstream historical lore from the Aztec accounts of civil strife in the 15th century reign of Huitzilopochtli, internal betrayals among city-states like the Triple Alliance's tensions with Texcoco led to ritualized conflicts resolved through captive exchanges. A local legend from the annals of the Huitzilopochtli's court, recounting how such fractures were mended or exploited in the Tlacacalco ceremonies, where gods like Tezcatlipoca were invoked to divine true loyalties amid the chaos. Their mirrors and omens turning allies into unwitting foes. Much as now the arena's bedlam echoes those human divisions elevated to divine scale. The pantheons wore a grander reflection of empire's fragile bonds. Chaos intensifies, blades glaives carving voids that swallow allied mists. Lances keening winds that buffet solar shields turning the hosts inward. Renewers' sides now defensive arcs against encroaching shadows. The eclipse's corona flaring erratically as if feeding on the discord. Its light twisting glyphs on the tiles into mocking patterns of fractured serpents and eclipsed suns. The epic cadence royals in the turmoil. Suspense fracturing into urgent pulses as the once united front devolves. God's commands clashing in the ether, Huitzilopochtli's roars demanding order. Quetzalcoatl's whispers urging restraint, yet the betrayals propagate. A shadow jaguar leaping not at guardians, but a renewer artisan champion, its starry pelt singeing his vine tattoos in a burst of verdant backlash. Psychological observations linger amid the clash, immortals grappling with the self-inflicted wounds. Their powers dimming in the chaos as oaths unravel like threads pulled too tight. Mortal champions becoming the phrase fulcrum Xochitl's spear, steadying a phalanx's edge. The priestess's eddies parting to shield wind riders, yet the war's intimacy breeds despair. Chaos a mirror to the primordial stirrings that birthed it, where God's divisions risk consigning their anchors to the eclipse's maw. A quirky or bizarre detail flares in the disarray. Tezcatlipoca's shadow glaive amid the turns doesn't merely void strikes, but absorbs the betrayal's intent. Replaying it as inverted echoes, a lash meant for mist rebounding as a shadowy tendril that binds the wielder briefly, forcing a moment of compelled alliance. A peculiar trait from nocturnal rites where temple glaives and divinations trapped. Lies in their obsidian, releasing them as binding vines that humbled deceivers, though the glaive's inversion sometimes looped. Endlessly trapping gods in self-doubt's cycle once, causing a ritual to halt as the mirror god wrestled his own blade. You see it now? A glaive-wielding shadow, ensnaring its own multiple in a void vine. the inversion forcing a reluctant parry against an advancing serpent, the bizarre loop buying precious seconds for the renewers to regroup, yet amplifying the chaos as echoes multiply the turns. The shattering holds in precarious balance, the arena a maelstrom of redirected blades and flickering loyalties. The corona's light dimming as the eclipse deepens its gaze, guardians watching from the depths with opportunistic stillness. Yet, amid the turmoil, Quetzalcoatl's winds begin to coalesce at the vanguard's core, the feathered serpent mounting a desperate stand, his lance keening a clarion that cuts through the discord, weaving gales against the overwhelming odds of betrayal's tide. But the question that remained was, can the feathered serpent's winds reclaim the shattered front before the chaos consumes the anchors and gods alike in its devouring spin? The arena's glyphs pulse erratically, betrayal's echoes fading into the gathering gales, the desperate defense poised to pierce the fray's heart. The arena's glyphs pulsed with erratic fervor, crimson-veined patterns casting fleeting illuminations across the maelstrom of clashing forms and shadowed intents, as Quetzalcoatl's winds begin to gather at the fractured core of the fray. The feathered serpent's essence manifesting in a towering cyclone that spirals upward from the obsidian tiles, drawing in the discordant breaths of the beleaguered hosts like a gentle yet insistent embrace. You stand within the eye of this burgeoning gale, the air around you softening from the sharp bite of betrayal's chaos to a rhythmic hush. Feathers from distant riders drifting lazily in the updraft, their iridescent hues catching the eclipse as lingering. Corona to paint the encroaching turmoil in subdued shades of blue and gold. The psychological tide turns subtly here amid the unraveling, where the serpent's presence evokes not the raw fury of confrontation, but a measured call to remembrance, gods and anchors pausing in their inward strikes to feel the pull of shared origins. The war's devouring spin yielding momentarily to the wind's soothing whisper, as if the immortals glimpse the fragility of their own divisions through the calm at the storm's heart. Quetzalcoatl mounts his desperate defense in waves of enveloping harmony, his lance keening a sustained note that resonates through the arena like an ancient flute summoning the dawn. The cyclone expanding to enfold the splintered phalanxes, winds weaving tendrils that gently disentangle glaive from mist and dart from serpent scale, urging the hosts toward realignment without the sting of further accusation. You sense the serpent's form coalescing at the cyclone's apex, his serpentine body undulating with deliberate grace, scales shimmering softly in the corona's light as he extends feathered wings that fan currents of cool, reassuring air, carrying echoes of the primordial council and the codex, unveiled prophecies, fragments of unity that brush against the warrior's essences, easing the paranoia sown by mirrors and mirages. Huitzilopochtli's solar legions, their shields dimmed by internal clashes. Feel the winds coax their flames into contained glows, the war god's roar softening to a resonant hum that syncs with the lance's tone. His Otlotla steadying in Xochitl's mortal grip as the champion's flickering form stabilizes, the human anchor drawing strength from the gale's calm. His earlier reluctance fading into a quiet resolve bolstered by the serpent's enveloping presence. The defense unfolds with a measured cadence, the cyclonus embrace methodically parting the chaos shadow brigades. Voids filled with circulating breezes that dilute their absorbing hunger. Tezcatlipoca's glaives humming lower as winds polish their obsidian edges without clash, reflecting not indictments but glimpses of the smoking mirror's own isolation amid the fray. Tlaloc's aquatic host responds next, mists coiling inward to merge with the cyclone, forming a luminous helix where rain whips trail harmless arcs. The rain deities' goggle eyes softening their flash as the winds temper his retaliatory surges into nurturing veils that quench overheated solar darts. Sensory details soften in this interlude, the gale's murmur blending with the arena's fading din, soothing rush like lake waters lapping at Chinampa, edges under starlit calm.
Ow.
The air lightening with the fresh, dewy scent of stirred earth from the tile's glyphs, mingling with the subtle warmth of renewed flames, no longer acrid but comforting like hearth embers on a cool evening. And the visual serenity emerging warriors form silhouetted in the cyclone's glow, its movements slowing from frenzy to deliberate steps. The blood moon's corona diffusing into a gentle halo that reassures rather than devours, easing the eclipse's oppressive weight. Psychological intrigue deepens in the wind's hold, immortals and mortals alike observing the serpent's stand as a mirror to their inner tempests, the feathered one's benevolence probing the egos that fueled the betrayals. Quetzalcoatl's whispers evoking the council's initial tensions without judgment allowing. Tezcatlipoca, a fleeting pause where his mirror clears to show not rivals but shared vulnerabilities, the trickster. Coyote's grin faltering as illusions dissolve harmlessly in the breeze, revealing the emptiness of unchecked cunning. The mortal champions anchored this calm profoundly, the priestess, Eddies, harmonizing with the gale to cradle a faltering preneur, her human touch grounding the divine in empathy. Xochitl's spear lowered not in defeat, but invitation, extending toward a shadow multiple that hesitates. The winds bridging their divide with shared breaths from the surface world. Where priests' chants rise in faint harmony, their offerings now a soothing undercurrent rather than a frantic tide. This defense reassures, without overwhelming. The cyclones embrace a balm that fades the imagery of shattered alliances into recollections softened by time. Gods feeling the pull toward reconciliation, their powers coiling inward for reflection rather than expulsion. The war's chaos yielding to introspection where unity's promise glimmers faintly amid the lingering fractures. In mainstream historical lore from the Toltec-Aztec syncretism and the 12th century migrations, Quetzalcoatl was revered as the pacifier in myths like those in the annals of Tenochtitlan, where his winds quelled divine quarrels during the world's third sun's wind destruction, restoring order through gentle persuasion rather than force. A local legend from Tula's ruins, recounting how his feathered effigies and ceremonies diffused tribal feuds, their placement in temple winds, invoking calm that turned warriors' hands from blades to olive branches. The serpent's benevolence, a counter to Tezcatlipoca's discord. Much as now the cyclone embodies that restorative force on a cosmic scale. The eclipse's gaze softening its devouring intent under the wind's influence. The stand holds, renewers' scythes, tracing slow arcs that mend not just forms but frayed intents. Verdant light pulsing in time with the lance's keen, coyote slings falling quiet as deceptions lose their sting in the reassuring flow, the hosts realigning in loose formations where shadows flank mists without strike, solar glows illuminating wind paths without scorch. Yet, as the cyclone peaks in a luminous swirl that bathes the arena in diffused serenity, a subtle tremor ripples from the depths, the guardian's opportunistic stirrings quelled but not silenced. Their starry forms massing beyond the glyph's glow, while the winds carry a final fading whisper of the primordial forces. Hinting at the cataclysm's inexorable approach even in this calm, the eclipse's corona stabilizes, the blood moon's light warming the tiles without burn, the defense a momentary respite where breaths deepen, imagery of conflict blurring into the horizon, the gods. An anchor sharing a collective exhale that reassures the fray's heart might yet mend before the deeper unraveling claims all. A quirky or bizarre detail whispers in the gale's core, Quetzalcoatl's lance. During such stands doesn't merely keen but exhales feather memories, ethereal plumes that attach briefly to touched essences, replaying moments of harmony from the pantheon's past in soothing visions like council agreements or creation's dawn. A peculiar trait from airy lore where replicas and meditations granted seers glimpses of lost unities. Though the memories sometimes clung too long, inducing nostalgic trances that blurred present resolve. The lance's tip shedding these plumes now in soft drifts that settle on Tezcatlipoca's mirror, reflecting a long-forgotten pact that stills his glaives momentarily. The bizarre attachment fostering a reluctant nod amid the realignment. The cyclone begins to dissipate slowly. Winds unfurling like a sigh into the arena's expanse. The host steadied, but watchful. Eclipse's gaze turning contemplative rather than consuming. The realms beyond sight holding their breath as the guardian's rumble grows faint. Imagine you are enfolded in these winds, a feather memory brushing your thoughts. What harmony from the divine tapestry would reassure your essence in the phrase quieting heart? Ancient mysteries of the Aztec pantheon surface in this defense. The feathered serpent as the cycle's renewer. His winds a gentle force against destruction's tide, reminding that even in cataclysm, immunity's whisper can temper the storm. Mortals and immortals entwined in the delicate balance of mending before the end. But the question that remained was, will Quetzalcoatl's winds hold the fragile realignment long enough to face the guardian's resurgence? Or will the cataclysm's shadow reclaim the calm before the final unraveling silences the pantheon forever? The arena stills, the corona's light softening to twilight hues, the hosts poised in renewed formation as the depths stir once more. The epic's close drawing near in hushed anticipation. The arena's stillness hangs like a held breath in the softening twilight hues of the Coronis light, the obsidian tiles cooling beneath the renewed formation of hosts and anchors, their forms silhouetted against the deepening indigo of the eclipse's waning edge. Yet the depth's stirring escalates from a distant rumble to a resonant growl that vibrates through the glyphs, sending faint cracks spiderwebbing across the expanse like veins of encroaching night. You feel the shift in the air's texture, subtle hardening, the reassuring warmth of Quetzalcoatl's dissipating winds, giving way to the chill draft of primordial unrest, carrying the faint sulphurous whisper of the earth's core awakening further, as if the serpent's calm has only delayed the cataclysm's inexorable surge. The psychological veil lifts slowly here, the fragile realignment exposing not just renewed resolve but the undercurrent of exhaustion, gods and mortals alike sensing the toll of mended fractures, their essences humming with the quiet dread that unity's whisper may shatter against the guardian's resurgence. The war's pivot turning from internal chaos to the abyss's unyielding hunger. The guardian's resurgence erupts from the chasm's maw now, tidal wave of compacted myth surging upward to reclaim the arena. Colossal forms coalescing from the depths, shadow starry, behemoths amplified by the prophecy's stirrings, jaguar colossi with pelts woven from fallen constellations that roar challenges, echoing like stellar explosions. Serpents coiling with scales of eclipsed moons that lash venomous tails to shatter the host's flanks. You witness the vanguard buckle first, Quetzalcoatl's wind riders diving to meet the jaguars. Lances keening renewed gales that buffet the beasts but falter against their reforming starry hides. The cyclone's remnants forming protective eddies that shield Xochitl's dart thrusts. The champion's human form flickering brighter as he strikes true, embedding solar shards that make a colossus recoil in a burst of celestial debris. Huitzilopochtli's solar phalanx charges the serpent vanguard, Atlattl's hurling darts that ignite the gloom. Corona shards refracting the blood moon's light into prismatic barrages that pierce scales. Yet the serpent's tails whip countermeasures, venom mists eroding the phalanx's shields and forcing renewers to scythe verdant barriers in hasty defense. Lalaka's mists merging with the gales to form hybrid storms that drown encroaching tails. The resurgence overwhelms in phased assaults, the arena transforming into a churning vortex where depth's guardians exploit the realignment's fragility. Starry roars disorienting the shadow brigades and turning. Tezcatlipoca's glaives against illusory multiples born of the clash, the smoke and mirrors voids swallowing his own deceptions before they solidify. Coyote's scouts dart through the fray, slings popping mirages that mimic guardian forms to confuse the behemoths, buying moments for the priestess champion's eddies to engulf a jaguar's flank. Her whipcoes replaying mortal pleas that bolster the aquatic host's resolve, yet the venom's acid etches her ethereal armor. The boundaries straining anew as the eclipse's gaze intensifies, pulling at the anchor's threads with a devouring pull that blurs their forms against the indigo backdrop. Sensory details surge in the onslaught, the arena's tiles fracturing under colossal paws, a grinding crunch that reverberates like bones snapping under pressure. The air thickening to a choking density with sulfur and venom's acrid bite, mingling with the ozone of clashing storms and the faint starry ozone of dispersing constellations. And the auditory maelstrom building, the jaguar's roars harmonizing with serpent hisses into a cosmic dirge. Lances and whips providing counter-melodies that strain against the depth's bass thunder. The blood moon's corona flaring erratically to illuminate the chaos in bursts of crimson revelation. Psychological intrigue boils amid the resurgence. Mortals directing their hosts with commands laced by the serpent's recent calm. Quetzalcoatl's winds now laced with urgent pleas for endurance. Carrying feather memories that replay the council's unity to steel faltering warriors, while Tezcatlipoca's shadows probe for weaknesses. His mirrors reflecting not just foes, but the guardian's own primordial origins, forcing a reluctant introspection that slows his brigade's advance. The mortal champions become the fray's linchpin, Xochitl's spear weaving through phalanx gaps to anchor solar darts, his human resolve a beacon that tempers Huitzilopochtli's fury into precise strikes. The renewer artisan's vines extending to bind a serpent's coil, mending a breached mist veil, mid-clash. Yet the eclipse devours slivers of their essences, visions of surface kin flashing in their minds, families by lake fires, unbidden doubts that the anchor's sacrifice might tip the balance toward oblivion. Observations deepen on the cataclysm's nature. Gods realizing the guardians as extensions of the unmade worlds. Their resurgence a test of the pantheon's mended bonds, where unity's fragility mirrors the mortals. Own stakes the war's chaos a forge that tempers or breaks immortals pondering if the depths. Hunger reflects their earlier divisions amplified into cosmic appetite. In mainstream historical lore from the Aztec creation myths and the 16th century legend of the suns, the guardians of previous destructions, jaguars of the first sun, winds of the fourth were seen as inevitable forces of renewal through ruin, invoked in the tonal Pahuli calendar's omens to prepare for cycle's ends. A local legend from the Chichen Itza influences blended into Mexica tales recounting how priests during the 1507 eclipse summoned dancers to mimic these behemoths, believing their ritual clashes could appease the depths and avert total unraveling. The resurgence a divine echo of human preparations, where anchors like the chosen warriors embodied the bridge between ruin and rebirth. Here the assault mirrors that. The host's defenses adapting renewers, sides harvesting guardian energies to redistribute as verdant surges. Trickster slings evolving deceptions into lures that draw serpents into solar traps. Cyclone's remnants forming a central bastion where champions converge, their presence is sinking. The artifacts hums into a unified chorus that pushes back a jaguar wave, the eclipse's corona pulsing in response, its devouring gaze fracturing as light pierces the indigo. The epic cadence roils toward climax suspense, cresting as the resurgence peaks in a colossal convergence. Starry serpent-jaguar hybrid. Rearing from the chasm its form a nexus of primordial fury that lashes across the arena, shattering tiles and forcing the bastion to yield ground. Quetzalcoatl's lance keening a desperate crescendo to summon a gale wall that holds the beast at bay. Sensory immersion heightens. The hybrids roar a stellar quake that vibrates your core, venom stars raining in sizzling trails. The air electric with the scent of ionized myth and crushed glyphs. The corona's light warping into prismatic shields that reflect the assault, and the din peaking in layered furores hisses winds and hums. Weaving into the cataclysms, prelude mortal chants from above, bleeding through as faint harmonies that anchor the fray. A quirky or bizarre detail roars in the hybrid-esque core. The serpent-jaguar-esque starry nexus harbors covoids fissures that replay the pantheon-esque past cataclysms as auditory traps, drawing warriors into trances with whispers of unmade worlds. Peculiar trait from underworld lore where cenote divers reported hearing drowned suns' laments. The voids and rituals used to commune with ancestors, but often trapping souls in nostalgic loops. The hybrid-esque fissures now echoing the first sun-esque jaguar devouring in a hypnotic lure that stalls a windrider, only shattered by Xochitl's dart embedding to release a burst of silenced history. The resurgence holds the arena in grip, the bastion straining but unyielding. The eclipse's gaze turning from devourer to witness. The cataclysm's shadow lengthening as the hybrid coils for the final strike. The host realignment tested to its limit. Imagine you are at the bastion's edge, lance or scythe in hand. The echo voids whisper brushing your mind. What past unraveling would the resurgence unearth to challenge your stand? Ancient mysteries of the Aztec cosmos unfold in this assault. The guardians as the cycle's enforcers. Their resurgence the forge where mended fractures either solidify or shatter. Reminding that cataclysm renews only through the pantheon's collective endurance. Mortals anchors the spark that defies the depth's eternal hunger. But the question that remained was, can the bastion's unified hum repel the hybrid's final coil before the cataclysm swallows the arena whole, silencing the gods in eternal night? The corona flares defiantly, the hybrid rears. The depths roar, culminating in the unraveling's brink, the epic's end poised in the balance of one shattering strike. The corona's defiant flare casts elongated shadows across the arena's fractured expanse, the obsidian tiles splintering further under the hybrid's rearing bulk, its starry nexus pulsing with the cataclysm's raw pulse as the final coil tightens, the beast's serpentine body arching like a bow drawn to breaking. Jaguar maw, gaping wide with fangs that drip venom laced with unmade histories. You stand resolute, at the bastion's trembling edge. the unified hum of artifacts and anchors vibrating through your form like a second heartbeat, the air compressing under the weight of impending collision, carrying the acrid prelude of stellar dissolution and the faint, underlying sweetness of renewal's desperate bloom. The psychological brink sharpens here, the pantheon's mended fractures laid bare in this singular moment, gods and mortals fused in a collective exhale of defiance, their essences teetering between oblivion's pull and the spark of enduring light. The war-esque climax not in raw destruction, but the choice to weave fate anew from the unraveling S-threads. The cataclysm's climax erupts in a shattering convergence, hybrids coil unleashing in a cataclysmic lash that propels its massive form forward, starry scales shattering the air in a sonic boom that echoes through the realms, the nexus voids erupting whispers of previous Sun's End's jaguar, devouring the earth, winds scattering the giants drawing warriors toward trans-like stupors amid the bastion's lines. Quetzalcoatl's gale wall surges to meet it, the lance's keen crescendoing into a howling barrier that collides with the beast in a vortex of feathers and stars. Winds tearing at the hybrid's pelt to expose churning voids that threaten to swallow the cyclone whole. The feathered serpent's form twisting at the apex, wings beating a rhythm that sinks the host's hums into a resonant shield. Huitzilopochtli's phalanx anchors the breach, solar darts arcing in a corona-infused barrage, shards embedding in the nexus to replay solar rebirths that counter the void's laments. Xochitl's spear thrusting through the gale to pierce a fang his mortal cry, piercing the din as human resolve ignites. The dart into a blazing conduit that stems the beasts has advanced the champion's form glowing ethereal boundaries, blurring as surface kin's visions fuel his stand. The collision cascades in layered fury, Tlaloc's mists exploding into a tidal front that engulfs the hybrid's flanks. Rain whips cracking lightning veins that short-circuit starry scales, the priestess champion's eddies weaving mortal pleas into binding currents that drag the beast's tail into submersion. Her armor cracking but holding as the surge drowns a void fissure mid-whisper. Tezcatlipoca's shadows exploit the chaos, glaives carving inversions that rebound the hybrid's venom against its own form. Voids looping the beast's roars back into self-dissonance. The smoke and mirror-s brigade probing the nexus with mirrored strikes that reflect the guardian's primordial rage inward. Coyote slings popping deceptions that lure the jaguar maw into snapping at illusory bastions. Buying crucial breaths for Zyptotech's renewers, two scythe-verdant arcs across the fray. Harvesting cataclysmic energies to mend the gale wall's tears. The flayed lord's golden pulses radiating reassurance that tempers the eclipse's devouring gaze into a witnessing light. Sensory details overwhelm the climax, the hybrid S impact a thunderous quake that buckles the arena's core. Tiles erupting in shards that whirled like dark stars in the vortex. The air ionizing to a plasmathic haze. Scents of sulfur and venom yielding to the clean bite of unleashed winds and the herbal bloom of verdant men's. The corona's flare blinding in bursts that etch retinal aftermages of clashing myths. And the auditory apocalypse roars inverting into howls, whips and lances harmonizing in a defiant symphony, mortal anchors. Cries weaving through as grounding chords that pierce the cosmic dirge, the blood moon's eclipse fracturing its disk in illusory cracks that mirror the unraveling's peak. Psychological intrigue reaches its zenith, immortals channeling the serpent's calm into focused fury. Quetzalcoatl's winds carrying not just gales but the council's oaths reborn, probing the hybrid's voids to expose the cataclysm as a mirror of their own near dissolution.
Acts realizing the guardians.
Is the unclaimed aspects of their pantheon Tezcatlipoca's rage unbound. Huitzilopochtli's light unchecked, turging a synthesis where division yields to wholeness. Dordal champions embodying this bridge, Xochitl's spear hand steady despite the eclipse's tug, his visions of kin transforming dread into purpose. The phrase heart a forge, where unity's spark defies the abyss's maw. In mainstream historical lore from the Aztec eschatology in the 16th century Codex Chimalpopoca, the fifth sun's prophesied end an earthquake knew why. Olin demanded the gods' collective sacrifice to sustain the cycle. With Quetzalcoatl retrieving bones from the underworld to birth humanity, a local legend from the post-conquest oral traditions around, Lake Texcoco, recounting how during the 1519 omens preceding court's arrival, priests interpreted stellar beasts as harbingers of such convergences, invoking dances that mimicked divine clashes to avert the end. The climax, a ritual echo where anchors like the Nawal shamans bridged realms to renew the light. Much as now the bastion's stand embodies that sacrificial convergence, the hybrids fall the price for the pantheon's rebirth. The beast thrashes in the vortex, nexus fracturing under the barrage's serpent scales sloughing into starry rain. Jaguar limbs buckling as voids collapse inward. The renewer scythes, harvesting the debris to fuel a final verdant surge that binds the hybrid S-form. Tezcatlipoca's glaive inversion, looping its final roar into silence. Coyote's mirage shattering the nexus in a cascade of illusory ends that overwhelm the Guardian's core. The epic cadence crests and breaks, the hybrid's form imploding in a silent nova of dispersed myth. Starry remnants scattering like pollen across the arena, the bastion holding as the gale wall envelops the fallout. Winds and mists merging to cleanse the tiles of venom and void, solar shards igniting the debris into purifying flames that the renewers quench with verdant rains. The eclipse recedes fully, the blood moon's disk hole once more its corona expanding into dawn-like radiance that bathes the weary. Hosts the cataclysms, shadow lifting as the depths rumble fades to echoes guardians vanquished, not in annihilation but integration their essences absorbed into the pantheons. We've primordial forces tempered by the unity forged in the brink. Sensory immersion ebbs to catharsis, the vortex quieting to a soft zephyr, air clearing to the fresh petrichor of mended earth and the warm glow of embers, the tiles reforming under renewer's touch, glyphs igniting in harmonious patterns that pulse with renewed cosmic rhythm, and the din dissolving into relieved sighs, mortal chants from above swelling in triumphant harmony. The anchor's forms solidifying, Xochitl's spear lowering as kin visions fade into resolve. A quirky or bizarre detail fades with the nova, the hybrid's nexus. In defeat, it doesn't merely disperse, but releases sunseeds, tiny orbs of compacted cataclysm that embed in victor's essences, blooming later as visions of alternate unmakings. A peculiar trait from cenote lore, where divers claim to harvest such seeds from guardian relics, using them in rituals to foresee renewals, though the seeds sometimes germinated prematurely, inducing prophetic fevers that blurred victory with lingering dread, the orbs now drifting into Quetzalcoatl's winds. One settling on Tezcatlipoca's mirror to reflect a softened future, the bizarre bloom hinting at cycles unbroken. The climax resolves in poised renewal, the arena a cradle of light where hosts and gods converge, essences mingling in the afterglow, the pantheon's fractures sealed in the cataclysm's forged mortals. Anchors emerging as the weaves enduring thread the realms beyond sight unfolding, not in ruin but potential, the epic's unraveling transmuted to rebirth's dawn. Imagine you are etched in this nova's light, a sunseed blooming in your core. What alternate fate from the cataclysm would the Guardian's fall reveal to guide the pantheon's next cycle? Ancient mysteries of the Aztec five suns culminate here, the cataclysm as the necessary purge guardians. Resurgence, the trial that births the sixth light from unity's sacrifice, a testament to how gods and mortals entwined defy. Eternal night through shared endurance, the climax, the cosmos, sigh of continuance. But the question that remained was, with the hybrid quelled and the depths silenced, will the pantheons renewed weave sustain the fragile dawn, or will the sunseed's blooms unearth new shadows in the light of victory? The arena glows with nascent dawn, the hosts dispersing in harmonious retreat, the epic closing on whispers of cycles eternal, the realms mending in the quiet after the storm. The arena's nascent dawn glows with a subdued luminescence, the obsidian tiles knitting back into seamless patterns under the renewer's lingering touches, their verdant arcs fading like the last breaths of a fervent prayer as the hosts disperse in harmonious retreat. Ethereal forms dissolving into wisps that trail back toward their realms, leaving the chasm's maw to seal with a soft earthen sigh. You linger in the afterglow, the air lightening to a crisp clarity that carries the faint, purifying scent of rain-washed stone and blooming night jasmines from the surface vales. The blood moon's corona retreating into full lunar serenity, its light now a gentle silver that bathes the emptying expanse in tranquility. The psychological residue settles like dew on the soul, the pantheon's renewed weave humming with the quiet satisfaction of endurance, gods and anchors alike, reflecting on the cataclysm's forge. Where victory's light unearths not just triumph, but the subtle shadows of what might yet bloom. The epic's close whispering of cycles eternal, yet laced with the sunseed's latent promisor, perilin the fragile dawn. In the dispersing wake, the pantheon's realms begin to mend, boundaries reaffirming with a subtle shimmer that echoes the council's original oaths. Quetzalcoatl's winds carrying the feathered serpent back to his eyrie. Where the lance settles into repose, its keen silenced but resonant with the unity reclaimed. Feathers rustling softly as visions of the hybrids fall replay in gentle eddies, reassuring the divine vigil against future stirrings. Huitzilopochtli's solar legions fade into the zenith's warmth. The Otlot's cords loosening as the war god returns to his pyramid. Flames dimming to embers that warm rather than scorch, Xochitl's mortal essence withdrawing from the spear with a final glow. The champion emerging from his trance by the lake's edge, his body marked faintly with corona scars that pulse like distant stars, a human testament to the weave's endurance. His reluctance transformed into a storyteller's resolve to share the night's omens with kin. Tlaloc's mists recede to the grotto cenotes, the rain whip coiling dormant as the deity submerges. Storms tempering to seasonal drizzles that nourish the chinampas below. The priestess awakening in her shrine with damp robes and a newfound rhythm in her chants, her whipco's now harmonious pleas rather than desperate surges. The mending extends to the shadowed fringes, Tezcatlipoca's brigade slinking into cavernous retreats, the glave's obsidian dulling as the smoke and mirror polishes its surface clean of inversions, reflecting not betrayals but the hybrid's quelled nexus, reluctant introspection settling over the god as he contemplates. The sunseed embedded in his form a blooming vision of alternate isolations that tempers his malice into watchful caution. The shadows softening their prow. Coyote scouts vanish into the Badlands thorns, the illusion's sling quieting as the trickster curls in his boulder lair. Deceptions dissolving into playful yips that echo the phrase lessens his grin wry with the knowledge that cunning thrives best in balance, the shaman champion. Rousing in the desert sands, with a pouch that hums faintly, his visions laced with mirage warnings to guide his people through earthly intrigues. God. Totec's renewers trail verdant vines back to the groves, the sides, jade curving dormant as the flayed lord sheds his final golden layer emerging, renewed in fertile earth. The artisan awakening with vine tattoos that wither to faint patterns, his hands itching not with loss but inspiration to weave tapestries of the cataclysm's mending. For temple walls. Sensory details linger in the retreat, the arena's air cooling to a serene hush, the sulphurous bite yielding to the subtle perfume of petrichor and jasmine, mingling with the warm, fading embers of solar remnants. The tiles hum, subsiding to a soft vibration like the earth's contented purr, glyphs glowing faintly before dimming to sleep. And the auditory fade the hybrid's echoes dissolving into wind sighs and mist whispers. Mortal chants from above swelling into celebratory rhythms that bridge the veils. Priests igniting new fires in the precincts to honor the dawn's return. Psychological reflections deepen in the dispersal. Immortals observing the sunseeds. Subtle blooms Quetzalcoatl's winds, stirring a vision of unchecked benevolence leading to stagnation. Huitzilopochtli's embers flickering with unchecked fury birthing eternal night, these alternate fates. Unearthed as gentle admonitions urging the pantheon toward equilibrium, where God's powers, tempered by the anchor's human sparks, guard against the shadows that victory might yet sow. The mortal champions, dispersing to their worlds. Carry the weave's thread, Xochitl, by the lake, gazing at the stars with newfound reverence, his scars a map of endurance. The priestess in the mountains, her rituals now infused with the hybrid's quelled roar, turning warnings to wisdom. The shaman and artisan, their crafts enriched with cataclysms, lessons bridging divine mysteries to earthly hearths. In mainstream historical lore from the Aztec post-conquest codices, like the Codex Aben in the early 16th century, the mending after omens such as the 1519 comet portents was marked by renewal festivals like the Tezcatlipoca, where flayed skins symbolized rebirth, priests distributing the cataclysm's remnants as talismans to the people. A local legend from the Valley of Mexico's recovery after the 1521 siege recounting how survivors invoked Quetzalcoatl's winds. In communal rites to heal the empire's fractures, their sunseed-like artifacts, obsidian beads, etched with visions, used to foresee balanced cycles. Much as now the pantheon's retreat embodies that restorative hush, the epic's unraveling, transmuted into a legacy of guarded harmony. Mortals and immortals entwined in the dawn's fragile light. The realms stabilize, the chasm sealing with a final glyph flash. The blood moon setting as true dawn crests the horizon, its rays piercing the veils to warm the surface. Chinampas blooming under timely rains. Temples echoing with songs of continuance, the codex and the archive fluttering one last time before stillness, its prophecies fulfilled in the weave's renewal. Yet as the dispersal completes, a single sunseed blooms faintly in the arena's core, light a soft anomaly amid the tiles, hinting at shadows that victory unearths visions of over-unity, stifling evolution. Or the guardian's remnants stirring in dormant cycles, urging eternal vigilance in the pantheon's light. The epic closes on this whisper, the realms mending in quiet assurance. Gods retreating to their vigil, anchors to their lives. The cosmos sighing into balanced repose, cycles eternal, yet ever watchful. A quirky or bizarre detail settles with the dawn, one sunseed. Unembedded, rolls across a tile to nestle in a glyph's crevice. Its bloom not visions, but a faint melody, a hybrid inverted roar turned lullaby that echoes sporadically in the winds. A peculiar remnant from sonat, lore, where such seeds and rituals sang prophecies as songs, guiding dreamers to balanced paths, but sometimes lulling them into complacency, the melody now drifting upward to Quetzalcoatl's eyrie. Where the serpent pauses his lance, humming in faint response, the bizarre tune, a final whimsical thread in the weave's tapestry. The arena empties fully, dawn's rays reclaiming the expanse. The hosts retreat a bridge to new beginnings. The cataclysms forge yielding not end but the dawn of vigilant peace. Where shadows bloom only to be tempered by light's enduring embrace, the dawn's rays stretch languidly across the Nauqua arena, their gentle warmth seeping into the obsidian tiles like a soft hand smoothing. Rumpled silk, the faint melody from the sunseed's bloom, drifting upward in lazy spirals that mingle with the first bird song filtering through the reaffirming, veils a harmonious whisper that reassures the cosmos of its gentle continuity. You remain in this serene hush, the air carrying a lingering freshness that evokes the quiet after a long rain, where the earth exhales in contentment, petals unfurling without haste, and the subtle scents of dew-kissed herbs and cooling embers blend into a comforting embrace, easing any remnants of the night's fervor into peaceful repose. The psychological after-echo softens here, the pantheon-esque weave humming not with the urgency of vigilance but the calm assurance of cycles gently turning gods and mortals, like finding solace in the mended light where shadows bloom only as faint reminders nurtured by the dawn's inclusive glow, inviting reflection on the shared journey that has led to this tranquil balance. In the deepening mending, the realms settle into a harmonious rhythm. Quetzalcoatl's eyrie filling with the soft rustle of feathers as the feathered serpent coils in meditative repose, his lance resting nearby like a faithful companion, its surface etched faintly with the night's trials, now a vessel for visions that flow not as warnings, but as soothing dreams of unity sustained through quiet stewardship. The winds outside carrying these images to the highlands, where seers awaken with smiles, their rituals enriched by the serpent's enduring benevolence. Huitzilopochtli's pyramid basks in the rising sun, its eternal flames flickering lower to a nurturing warmth that heats the altars without overwhelming. The war god pacing his steps with measured calm, his little dormant, yet resonant. Xochitl returning to his village by the lake with a lightness in his stride, the corona scars on his skin fading to subtle tattoos that tell of endurance without boast. His stories around evening fires weaving the cataclysm into tales that comfort rather than alarm. Reassuring families of the light's faithful return, the solar essence now a hearthglow in human hearts. The shadow domains ease their vigilance, Tezcatlipoca's caverns dimming to twilight serenity. The glaive sheathed in obsidian folds, as the smoke and mirror reflects the dawn's rays in softened gleams, unveiling not treacheries but pathways of tempered cunning. The sun seeds bloom in his essence, flowering into visions of isolation's quiet wisdom, guiding the god toward alliances that honor the night's lessons. His shadows curling like protective cloaks around the pantheon's edges, no longer probing, but preserving. Coyote's badlands hush under the morning light, the trickster lounging with a contented yawn. His sling pouch stilled as illusions give way to whimsical breezes that play harmless games with passing clouds. The shaman, champion, trekking homeward with a pouch that hums tunes of balanced jest, his laughter echoing through desert trails. Sharing deceptions turned to delightful riddles that bind communities in shared amusement, the cunning's edge blunted to gentle mischief in the weave's renewed tapestry.
Alak.
Grottos murmur with the trickle of settling waters. The rain whip coiled in jade repose as the deity reclines amid lily pads. His tempests resolved into soft showers that patter reassuringly on mountain leaves. The priestess emerging from her trance with robes drying in the sun, her chants flowing like streams that nourish rather than flood, carrying the hybrid's quelled roar as a lullaby to her people, easing fears of drought with promises of timely bounty. Zyptotek's groves flourish in verdant quiet, the scythe curving into the earth's embrace as the flayed lord renews his form in slow. Golden waves, vines trailing peacefully across the altars, the artisan returning to his loom with hands steady and inspired, his vine tattoos blooming into patterns of mended cycles that adorn temple cloths, inviting worshippers to touch and feel the reassurance of rebirth's gentle cycle, or shedding leads softly to growth. Sensory details fade into comforting familiarity, the arena's air warming to a balmy caress. The petrichor deepening with hints of blooming flowers and sun-baked clay, a bouquet that soothes the senses like a familiar embrace. The tile's subtle hum resolving into the earth's steady pulse. Glyphs dimming to subtle twinkles like fireflies at dusk, and the sound softening to a symphony of peace, the sunseed's melody weaving with birdsong in distant waves. Mortal songs from the temples rising in grateful harmony. A collective exhale that reassures the listener of the world's enduring kindness. Psychological reflections linger tenderly, mortals contemplating the sunseeds. It blooms as gifts rather than burdens. Quetzalcoatl's visions of balanced benevolence. Huitzilopochtli's flames of measured strength, these alternate fates, now soft guides toward equilibrium. Where the pantheon's light tempers shadows without erasure, gods finding solace in the anchor's human warmth. The champions' lives resuming with enriched purpose, their essences forever linked to the divine in quiet guardianship, the cataclysm's forge yielding a legacy of compassionate vigilance. In mainstream historical lore from the Aztec renewal rites and the Florentine codex of the mid-16th century, the post-cataclysm festivals like the Tezcatlipoca honored Tezcatlipoca's dual nature and controlled celebrations, where priests enacted mended cycles through symbolic dances and offerings, distributing amulets of jade and feather to symbolize the dawn's return. A local legend from the post-1487 temple dedication era recounting how after omens of eclipse and quake, the people gathered in groves for communal reflections. Their sunseed-like talismans polished obsidian orbs, singing faint melodies. In the light to affirm the fifth sun's continuance, much as now the pantheon's mending, embodies that restorative peace. The epic's close a gentle affirmation of cycles, where shadows serve the light. Mortals and immortals woven in the dawn's inclusive tapestry. The realms hush a promise of serenity sustained through shared remembrance. Yet, as the sun ascends fully, casting golden hues over the sealed chasm, the sunseeds, melody fades to a whisper carried on the breeze. Its final note a soft reassurance that new shadows may stir. But always in the light's gentle company, the pantheon retreating to their eternal watch, anchors to their nurtured lives. The cosmos breathing evenly into the day, cycles turning with unhurried grace. The epic concludes here, the unraveling fully mended into wholeness. The realms bathed in dawn's calm embrace, where victory's light holds shadows close, not as foes, but as kin in the eternal dance. As the sun climbs higher in the unclouded sky, its rays weaving through the veils to touch every corner of the mended realms. The pantheon's harmony resonates like a distant chime, a subtle vibration that binds the gods in quiet communion, their essences pulsing in sync with the earth's renewed rhythm. You drift through the fading afterglow the arena, now a forgotten cradle, overgrown with ethereal vines that bloom in soft, luminescence petals, releasing scents of wild honey and morning dew that linger like affectionate farewells. The air alive with the gentle hum of cycles and repose. The The psychological closure settles profoundly the cataclysm. It's forged, leaving not scars but luminous threads in the weave gods, embracing their shadows as integral to the light mortals. Carrying the dawn's warmth in their daily steps, the epic's unraveling a tapestry completed in balance where vigilance blooms, alongside peace inviting the cosmos to turn its wheel with unburdened grace. In the days that follow, Quetzalcoatl's winds whisper tales of the night to the feathered birds of the highlands, their songs carrying reassurance to wandering souls, the lance's visions evolving into dreams that guide seekers toward unity's gentle paths. Huitzilopochtli's flames warm the Great Pyramid without fervor, a steady light that beacons warriors home. Xochitl's stories by the lake fire becoming legends that comfort the young, his corona tattoos fading to whispers of strength shared among kin. Tezcatlipoca's mirrors reflect dawn's unbroken. The glaive's edge turned to contemplation, shadows now guardians of the weave's edges. Their watchful presence, a quiet ally in the eternal watch. Coyotes' yips echo in the badlands as playful breezes, the sling's deceptions soften to riddles that delight rather than divide. The shaman's pouch humming melodies that bind desert tribes in laughter and lore. Tlaloc's waters flow in measured abundance, grottos echoing with the patter of life-sustaining rains. The priestesses chants a river of solace that quenches the land's thirst, her whipcoes now lullabies for the weary. Zyptotec's groves teem with verdant life, the scythe dormant and fertile soil. The artisan's tapestries adorning temples with images of mended cycles, inviting touch and wonder in the worshipper's hands. The sun seed's melody, faint but persistent, drifts across the realms as a cosmic lullaby, its blooms unfolding in subtle visions that remind without alarm alternate paths as companions to the chosen dawn, ensuring the weave's strength through gentle evolution. Sensory echoes persist in the eternal, the air's crisp clarity deepening to the perfume of sun-ripened maize and blooming lotuses, a sensory embrace that soothes the spirit. The earth's pulse steady and inviting glyphs across the realms twinkling like stars in daylight, and the sounds a symphony of continuance birds harmonizing with distant drums. Mortal songs blending with divine whispers, a chorus that reassures the listener of the cosmos' kind continuance. Psychological harmonies unfold. Immortals finding depth in the anchor's simple joyskits, all Quetzalcoatl's benevolence, enriched by human empathy. Huitzilopochtli's might softened by shared stories, the sunseed's gifts fostering a pantheon at peace with its cycles. Shadows blooming as fertile ground for light's growth. The epic's legacy, a living reassurance that unraveling always yields to weaving. Gods and mortals entwined in the dawn's eternal dance. In the grand lore of the Aztec cosmos, as echoed in the surviving codices and oral echoes post-conquest, the five suns' tale ends not in finality, but in the promise of the sixth, where mended cycles sustain through communal remembrance. Festivals like the Tezcatlipoca celebrating the earth's gentle renewal, with dances that mimic the gods' harmony, a testament to how cataclysms forge not ends but beginnings. The weave's threads holding strong in the light of vigilant peace. The realms flourish under this eternal weave, the cataclysm, a cherished memory in the heart of the cosmos where shadows and light gods and mortals turn together in unhurried grace, the story's close an open invitation to the next dawn's whisper.